Chapter 26. Thor exploded into trouble, intending to teach the three of Zenan a lesson. But unfortunately, things backfired. Seeing the fist coming at him, Zenan didn't dodge or avoid it, while Dongshan and Bai Miao ignored it indifferently. Humph! Human beings are weak. Seeing this, Thor laughed triumphantly in his heart. The humans in Midgard are very weak. He thought that the three of Zenan didn't react at all. But at the next moment, Xian turned around calmly. Thor's fist just missed. But he himself couldn't react in time, and he had nowhere to rely on his strength, so he fell to the ground with a plop. That embarrassed look looked like a big blonde turtle. Ding! Thor's emotional value plus 2333. Thor, who was lying on the ground, lost his mind. He didn't expect that at the moment, he couldn't beat those terrifying white-clothed demons, but he couldn't even beat three small humans. Seeing himself lying on the ground in a state of embarrassment, he wished he could find a crack in the ground and get in. Ah! Bai Miao sneered disdainfully. Dongshan's mouth twitched. The boss really hit the mark. This guy is an impulsive fool. Xian shook his head helplessly, complaining secretly. Hearing that Miajin in the earphone reminded them that someone was coming, he immediately said, "Mr. Thor, you don't want your embarrassment to be seen by others, do you?" Thor got up quickly when he heard the words. His face was flushed red, he stared angrily at Xian and the other three and questioned, "Damn Midgard people, you dare to provoke the great God King? I, Thor, will teach you a lesson on behalf of Asgard. It's up to you? Do you deserve it?" Bai Miao was not used to Thor at all, and taunted directly, "With your ghostly appearance now, without divine power, I'm afraid you can't even defeat ordinary people, right? You?" Thor was shocked, he didn't expect to be seen through. But he was even more angry at Bai Miao's ridicule. Thinking of him as a dignified Thor, it was the first time he was so despised by others, and Bai Miao even said that he was not as good as ordinary people. Damn people of Midgard! You shall meet the wrath of Thor. Thor glared at Bai Miao, dang, even prepared to strike again. But suddenly there was a scolding sound from outside the door. "What are you guys doing?" From outside the ward, a woman suddenly ran in, standing between Thor, Zenan, and the others. She looked at Xian and the others warily and asked, "This is a private ward, who are you? It's best to leave here now." As she spoke, the woman pretended to call the police. Ding! Jane Foster's mood value plus 555. "Miss Foster, please calm down." Facing the woman's questioning, Xian, the leader, said calmly, "My name is Zenan, a field member of the ERP organization. This time we are here for Mr. Thor. You don't want to cause a diplomatic crisis between humans and aliens, do you?" "ERP? Aliens? Diplomatic crisis?" Hearing what Zenan said, Jane Foster's pretty face was full of astonishment. But then she said even more dissatisfied, "Sir, I don't think this is funny. There are no aliens here, and it will not cause any diplomatic crisis. I only see you harassing my friends." Just at the moment, two people walked in again outside the door. One is an older man. The other is a young and beautiful woman. As soon as the two came in, they were taken aback by the situation in the room, and hurried to Jane Foster. The old man looked at the three of Zenan vigilantly, and asked without looking back, "Jane, are you all right? Who are they? Do we need to call the police?" Ding! Eric Savig's mood value plus 555. Ding! Daisy Louise's mood value plus 555. Seeing the scene getting more and more chaotic, Xian was a little speechless. He knew things would not go so well. However, thinking of the task assigned by the boss, he quickly calmed down, introduced himself again and said, "Mr. Thor, you rashly visited the Earth, I hope you can give a reasonable explanation. Otherwise, I have reason to suspect that you, Asgard, have other plans." The three of Jane Foster immediately looked at the three of Zenan like fools. Could it be that these people have some serious illness? What kind of aliens, Asgard? Still say it in a serious way, have you read too many fairy tales? Teacher, call the police. Jane Foster was about to call the police. But at the moment, Thor behind her jumped out, yelling and retorting, "Stupid human beings! What is there to plan for in a place like Midgard? The 9 realms are already under the rule of Asgard, and you are all Asgard's subjects." Jane Foster. Seeing that Thor was going crazy again, Jane Foster and others were speechless for a moment. Professor Eric even regretted picking up Thor. Originally they came here to do research, but since accidentally driving into Thor, things gradually developed out of control. Thor is simply a psychopath, clamoring what Thor is he? Dema karma, it's really funny. Do you really think that taking a mythical name is Thor? Then he is still God King Odin. They thought that they had fulfilled their duty by sending Thor to the hospital, and they could leave here with peace of mind to continue their research. But I didn't expect that it would be a hot time when they were going to pay the money. There are 3 more psychopaths here? Forget it, call the doctor directly. Mentally ill patients are also quite pitiful. After speaking, Professor Eric was about to leave the ward to find a doctor. But Bei Miao blocked him with a dodge. What do you want to do? Professor Eric was taken aback, and asked with a black face. Bei Miao said nothing with a cold face. He was already very upset about being treated as a mental illness by others, and at the moment didn't even have the idea of nonsense. And his behavior immediately made the situation even more tense. Jane Foster took out her mobile phone and said in a deep voice, "Stop. I'm going to call the police. You better get out of here immediately." "Shut up." Seeing the farce intensified, Xian Nan let out a deep drink. An overwhelming power emanated quietly. Immediately, everyone's body shook, their faces turned pale, and they looked at Xian Nan in horror. Even Thor, who is Thor, feels huge amounts of pressure. He looked at Zinan in disbelief, and secretly exclaimed, "How is it possible? Isn't this guy a weak Midgard? How could he have such a terrifying power?" Ding, Daisy Louise's mood value plus 666. Ding, Eric Savig's mood value plus 666. Ding, Jane Foster's emotional value is plus 888. Ding, Thor's emotional value plus 2333. Chapter 27. Young man, don't get excited, we have something to talk about. Seeing Zinan getting angry, Professor Eric quickly acted as a peacemaker. He resisted the fear in his heart to dissuade him. "I know you're in a hurry, but don't be in a hurry." Snort. Xian Nan snorted coldly, his eyes swept over everyone present one by one. Professor Eric and the others are anxious. Only Thor stared at Xian Nan with his neck stuck up. Even though he was shocked in his heart, he still didn't show any signs of resignation. "Prince of Asgard? I think you are a stupid fool." Looking at Thor coldly, Zinan mocked, "I don't care why you came to Earth, but since you are here, you must abide by the rules of our Earth. Even if God King Odin is here, there is no exception. Man of Midgard, you are too arrogant." When Thor heard this, he was furious and shouted, "Dare to blaspheme the great God King, you offended Thor, I will teach you a lesson. Odin is his hero." Zinan despised Odin so much, as a son, how could he tolerate it? Thor shouted and prepared to teach Xian Nan a lesson. He even forgot how embarrassed he was just now. "Don't want." Jane Foster and others want to stop it. But it's a pity that Thor ignored it and punched Zinan hard, his eyes filled with deep anger. Xian Nan didn't care about this, but just looked at Thor, who was rushing indifferently. At the moment when the opponent's fist came, he lightly raised his palm, directly imprisoning Thor's fist. What? Thor only felt that there was no way to advance, and there was no way to retreat, and he suddenly turned pale with fright. Only then did he realize how powerful Zinan was. On the contrary, he is a majestic Thor, but he has lost his divine power and has become a waste that is not as good as even the weak Midgard people. No. How could this be? Why did my father treat me like this? In an instant, Thor's mind exploded. Ding, Thor's emotional value plus 2333. Thor? Really ridiculous, I think he is the god of the hammer. Zinan taunted, and pushed Thor back with his backhand. Thor sat down on the ground. But at the moment, he was full of depression, he didn't care about his image, and he no longer had the previous arrogance. "Thor, you!" Jane Foster couldn't bear to see this. But Professor Eric kept his eyes on his nose and his heart, and he didn't dare to meddle in his own business anymore. Only Daisy Louise looked at Zinan without blinking her beautiful eyes. "This handsome Asian guy is too manly, right? Hey!" He pretended to be there again. Seeing this, Bei Miao, who was acting as the guard, suddenly became very sour. He was obviously the one who came first, okay? Not to mention what at the moment forced Wang Bei Miao to think. "Zinan, People from the hospital are coming soon, get out of there as soon as possible. Miajan's voice came from the earphones of the three of Zinan. At the moment, in the reverse world, Miajan invades the hospital monitoring through the ERP satellite, and provides guidance for the three at all times. Xian Nan heard the sound, and looked at Bai Miao and Dong Shan. The three quickly reached an agreement in silence. The good old man Dong Shan stepped forward, showing a trademark kind smile, smoothing things over. Captain, don't be angry, I think Mr. Thor is justifiable. Then Toshin looked at Thor again and said, Mr. Thor, hello, let me introduce you formally. We are field personnel of the ERP organization. This time we are here just to ask you about the purpose of your visit to Earth. After all, you are the Prince of Asgard. If you don't handle it well, this is a serious diplomatic issue. Our captain has a bad temper, please forgive me. Dong Shan is worthy of being Dong Shan. The character of this good old man is close to that of Phil Coulson. At the moment's words directly eased the tense atmosphere. Professor Eric and the others breathed a sigh of relief. Although it felt that Zinan and the others were not kind, but from Dongshan's words, at least it proved that there was no malice. It's just that this mouth is from an alien, are you sure it's not a drama? Is Thor really an alien prince? Ding, Daisy Louise's mood value plus 666. Ding, Eric Savig's mood value plus 666. Ding, Jane Foster's emotional value is plus 888. ERP? How do you know me? Thor, who was sitting on the ground, raised his head and looked at Dong Shan and the others in disbelief. He couldn't figure out how the other party knew him. And from the words of Dong Shan and others, he could see that the other party obviously knew him very well, which immediately made him feel extremely shocked. You must know that Asgard and Midgard have not been in touch for a long time. But how did Dong Shan and others know about Asgard's situation? Originally, he was a little depressed, but he suddenly thought that Dong Shan and others had such a complicated background, could it help him return to Asgard? As long as he can return to Asgard, he may be able to regain his father's forgiveness. Hehe, Mr. Thor is Thor, and the son of God King Odin, we ERP definitely know it very well. Dong Shan didn't explain, but just said something meaningful. This immediately shocked everyone present. Thor felt more and more mysterious about Toshin and the others, and a glimmer of hope surged in his heart. And Jane Foster and others also felt extremely horrified. Do aliens really exist? Thor can't really be Prince of Asgard, can he? And Dong Shan and others. Knowing the existence of aliens and having such a mysterious background, what kind of organization is ERP? Because of Dong Shan's words, everyone present was caught in the middle of thinking. Everyone has great curiosity about ERP. Ding, Daisy Louise's mood value plus 666. Ding, Eric Savig's mood value plus 666. Ding, Jane Foster's emotional value is plus 888. Ding, Thor's emotional value plus 1333. Chapter 28. Everyone. Under everyone's curious gaze, Dong Shan changed his tone and said, this is not a place to talk, if you don't mind, please let me tell you about other places. Okay. Let's go. Thor hurriedly got up from the ground. When he thought of asking ERP to send him back to Asgard, how could he have any dissatisfaction and anger? He even wanted to get out of this ghostly place with white-clothed demons as soon as possible. Jane Foster couldn't wait. He really wanted to know Thor's true identity, and he was also curious about what kind of organization ERP was. Daisy Louise never left Zinan's eyes from the beginning to the end. Only Professor Eric hesitated to say something. Dong Shan and the others looked mysterious and dangerous at first glance, and he really didn't want to get involved, otherwise it might be the second Thor. Didn't look at them just because they hit Thor with their car, which caused a lot of trouble. But let him reject Dong Shan's proposal, he really dare not speak. Professor Eric, right? Dong Shan saw Professor Eric's concerns, smiled and said, Professor, if you have something to do, you can leave on your own. The only person we are looking for is Mr. Thor. Phew. That's really good. Professor Eric was ready to leave immediately if he was pardoned. He looked at his two students and said, Jane, Daisy, we. Professor, you go first. Before Professor Eric could finish speaking, Jane Foster waved her hand and said, I want to stay here. Thor got hit by our car after all. I'm worried about what's left of him. Yeah, it's the same with others. Daisy Louise nodded like a chick pecking rice. But her eyes are looking at Xin Nan, who is aside from time to time, making it clear that she has other plans. You. Looking at the reactions of his two students, Professor Eric was dumbfounded. Are you worried about Thor's safety? I'm too embarrassed to point out you. I didn't expect that my dignified university professor would accept such two unscrupulous students. Can he still concentrate on research? Humph. Do as you please. Professor Eric was furious, and immediately walked away. Only Jane Foster looked embarrassed. But Daisy Louise didn't care about that. Being able to stay and continue to watch handsome guys, and also get in touch with the existence of aliens, is 10,000 times better than boring calculation research every day. Hehe, let's go too. Hearing footsteps outside, Dong Shan said with a smile. He didn't want to waste his words with the people in the hospital anymore. Let's go. Thor can't wait to walk out the door. But Dong Shan pulled him, pointed to the window, shook his head and said, let's go here, faster. Walk through the window. Thor froze for a moment, but then seemed to think of something. To know that he can fly by himself. So in his mind, it is reasonable for Dong Shan and others from the mysterious organization to be able to fly. But Jane Foster and Daisy Louise are dumbfounded. What's the point of not going through the windows when there are doors? But before they could ask, they were pulled by Thor to the window, and a beam of light descended from outer space. After covering a group of people, the beam of light was extremely bright in an instant. Immediately afterwards, all of them disappeared without a trace. Professor Eric, who had just left the ward, was abducted by doctors and nurses because he was worried about the students. A group of people pushed the door and entered, just in time to see the scene where the beam of light dissipated. The doctors and nurses didn't know why. They scanned the room, looking for the patient's trace. But Eric was just stunned. Ward Fa. How many people are there? Ding, Professor Eric's mood value is plus 1111. At the same time, in the wilderness outside the town. As Mjolnir came to Earth, he was discovered by Agent Melinda of S.H.I.E.L.D. for the first time. Phil Coulson was ordered to come here to investigate the truth about Mjolnir. At the moment, this place has been listed as a military restricted area, and it is strictly guarded by S.H.I.E.L.D. agents. No outsider can easily break into it. And in the temporary base, Phil Coulson was talking to a group of researchers. This hammer is very special. Ordinary equipment can't scan its metal properties at all. We guess it should be a brand new metal that has never been discovered. A researcher pointed to the data on the computer and said excitedly. If they can discover a brand new metal element as discoverers and researchers, they will definitely take this opportunity to become famous in one fell swoop. But what Phil Coulson said directly poured cold water on their hunger. So what? Phil Coulson asked calmly, as the top researcher of S.H.I.E.L.D. After so long, can you give me any conclusions? This. The researchers suddenly became embarrassed. Ordinary devices simply cannot scan, as they say. All conclusions so far are nothing more than speculation. At the moment, facing Phil Coulson's questioning, they were suddenly speechless, and their faces flushed even more embarrassingly. Continue to research. I don't need speculation, just the truth. Phil Coulson didn't give the researchers a hard time either. After saying something lightly, he left directly and came to the location of Mjolnir instead. Looking at the hammer standing quietly on the spot, Phil Coulson's expression flickered in surprise. A hammer that can't shake a single bit. I'm afraid it's nothing more than a legendary artifact, right? Could it be the product of aliens? Or... Phil Coulson couldn't help thinking about his previous experience in Monaco. A supernatural beast that looks like a monster. Become an armored warrior with a human body. Unleash mysterious witchcraft with a wave of your hand. Living humans are transformed into terrifying monsters. The existence of ERP and Shadow Realm is exactly the same as the hammer in front of him, and they are all existences that cannot be explained by common sense. If the ERP group were here, would they know the truth about hammer? Phil Coulson couldn't help but lost in thought. Ding, Phil Coulson's emotional value is plus 666. Chapter 29. Ding, Daisy Louise's mood value plus 666. Ding, Eric Savig's mood value plus 666. Ding, Jane Foster's emotional value is plus 888. Ding, Thor's emotional value plus 1333. The system prompts sounded one after another. With the activation of the ERP teleportation satellite, Xin Nan and others were teleported away and came directly to the reverse world. Next, let's talk about business, and there is no better place than the ERP base. And this can also prove the authenticity of the ERP organization. I believe that after seeing the strength of ERP, it will be of great benefit to the next plan, and at the same time, it can also gain a wave of emotional value from Thor and others. At the moment Lin Fan, who was staying in the ESP training box, couldn't help but be full of anticipation. This time, he might be able to harvest a wave of emotional value severely. Outside the ERP base. Like Armor Warrior World, there is a burger restaurant outside the base and Dongshan and others usually cook for themselves. Especially when the character Miyajin was drawn, the role of the cook was completely solid. There is absolutely nothing to say about Miyajin's cooking skills. Hamburger? What is this place? How come I've never seen it before? Looking at the empty streets around her, Jane Foster was full of curiosity. She remembered a flash of white light, and then they left the hospital ward and came to this completely unknown city. While being shocked, she couldn't help but feel more curious about ERP. What kind of technology are you guys using? And at the moment, Thor's excited voice sounded. He excitedly grabbed Dongshan's arm and asked, "If I'm not mistaken, this should be space teleportation technology, right? Then can you send me back to Asgard? Please." Spatial teleportation. After hearing what Thor said, Jane Foster realized it later. She thought about the research she was doing. Regarding astrology and celestial body movement, if certain conditions are met, it can indeed produce the effect of space teleportation. But this is just their conjecture and has not been verified. But just now they have personally experienced the feeling of teleportation. This is indeed space teleportation. Dongshan nodded politely, but then shook his head and said, "However, our ERP transmission satellite can only cover the Earth at present, and cannot set foot in Asgard yet." What? How did this happen? When Thor heard this, he suddenly became depressed. He came here with the intention of asking for help, but Dongshan said that there was nothing he could do, so wouldn't he be unable to return to Asgard? Originally, he still had hope, but now he fell into even greater despair. But at the moment, Dongshan changed his tone. Thor casts a look of anticipation. Even Jane Foster and Daisy Louise on the side were attracted by his panting. Can ERP really send people to the legendary Asgard? What would an alien planet look like? Ding, Daisy Louise's mood value plus 666. Ding, Eric Savig's mood value plus 666. Ding, Jane Foster's emotional value is plus 888. Ding, Thor's emotional value plus 1333. As long as you can help me, you will gain the friendship of the Prince of Asgard, and I can reward you handsomely. Seeing that there was hope again, Thor immediately started to paint big cakes. He also regained the spirit that belonged to the prince again. Looking at the confident and flamboyant Thor, Jane Foster's beautiful eyes blinked, and there was a strange light in his eyes. "Hee, don't worry, Mr. Thor." Facing everyone's eyes, Dongshan said with a smile, "Our ERP does have a higher level transmission method, but it is a pity that we field personnel do not have permission to use it. Even the boss has to be authorized by the headquarters." "That's great. Can you please help your boss?" Thor asked excitedly. Unexpectedly, in a turn of events, ERP could really send him back to Asgard, and he was so excited that he couldn't be more excited. And he was even more shocked by the strength of ERP. Can master such a powerful space transmission technology. ERP is definitely not a simple organization. This is also the top technology that few people master in the entire universe. I know you're in a hurry, but don't be in a hurry. Dongshan patted Thor's shoulder, pointed at the burger shop and said, "Mr. Thor, this matter needs to be discussed with the boss, and before that, we need to complete the routine inquiry. Ask, if you have anything to ask, just say it." Thor nodded hurriedly, without any resistance. At the moment he was very different from before. Bei Miao on the side didn't speak, but his face was full of contempt, and he looked down on Thor's bottomless appearance. In contrast, he still prefers Thor's previous unruly appearance. Soon a group of people walked into the burger shop one after another. Dongshan hosted coffee and other drinks for everyone, and definitely Thor's beer. Everyone took their seats, as if they were going to be tried in court. Dongshan looked at Xian who was upright, and suggested, Captain, you can ask. Xian nodded. He fixed his eyes on Thor, although he didn't speak, but he gave off a feeling of calmness and prestige. Don't look at Xian's usually kind personality and doesn't like to fight. But Yan Longxia carries the will of fire. In the battle against supernatural beasts in the shadow world, Yan Longxia is always at the forefront, playing an unparalleled decisive role. Zheng Zinan even gained the power of light, and turned into Emperor Xia to fight against the black monster. Once Xian gets serious, even Wang Bai Miao, who has a high self-esteem, will not dare to disobey the captain's decision. Good dong. Meeting Zinan's gaze, Thor swallowed. He still felt that Dongshan was easier to talk to. But he could also tell that among the three, Xian was the one talking, so he could only pretend to be calm. Ding, Thor's emotional value plus 1333. Isn't it just a slightly stronger Midgard man, what's the big deal? Thor comforted himself in his heart. Mr. Thor. At the moment, Xian's indifferent voice sounded, ERP is an organization that pursues peace. We will not restrict anyone's freedom. We welcome any alien friends to visit the Earth. Yeah, I'm an alien friend. Thor nodded hurriedly. Zinan ignored the reason and changed his tone, but... Chapter 30. Seeing that Zinan still has a magical twist, Thor suddenly became worried. No way, being controlled by others is like this. He was still counting on ERP to send him back to Asgard, so naturally he didn't dare to make another mistake. Bai Miao, who looked so talkative, was full of contempt. But before that, Xian looked majestic, and said in a deep voice, I need to make some routine inquiries to corroborate your statement, Mr. Thor. Assess your threat level. Thor was slightly silent when he heard this. Zinan's attitude reminded him of the situation in Asgard. When he was a prince. Once an outsider broke into Asgard, his attitude was the same as that of Zinan, even worse. Especially those suspicious elements, they were beaten up by him and thrown into prison. Didn't expect him to fall into the same situation now. It can only be said that time is fate. Thinking of his past experience, Thor couldn't help sighing secretly, regretting that he angered his father because of impulse. But he is also for the good of Asgard, as for being exiled? Ding, Thor's emotional value plus 688. Hey! Just ask directly. Taking a deep breath, Thor's tone was a little lonely. Jane Foster is a little confused. Thor, who was obviously excited just now, why is he suddenly emo? As for Daisy Louise? Look at the handsome guys, don't queue. Thank you Mr. Thor for your cooperation. First question first. Xian nodded slightly, his eyes were like torches and he said, why did Mr. Thor come to Earth? As soon as this remark came out, everyone in the audience looked at Thor in unison. This is what everyone is curious about. Seeing this, Thor fell silent, not knowing what to say. After all, he was exiled by his father. How could he be embarrassed to tell the truth in front of so many people? What? Do you have any concerns? Xian's tone slightly increased by 3 points. Jane Foster suddenly became nervous, don't make any more conflicts. No. Thor was silent for a while, shook his head, and said bitterly, actually, I was exiled to Earth. What? Hearing this, Jane Foster exclaimed. This answer completely exceeded her expectations, she thought Thor was really an alien friend. But I didn't expect that the other party was exiled to the Earth. This is too unbelievable, right? Ding, Jane Foster's emotional value is plus 666. Exile? Why do you say that? Xian and the others were also surprised, and asked directly. They don't trust Thor so easily. Even if everything about Thor, the boss has already told them clearly, but they are professionally trained. At the moment face Thor, they are the Asgardian alliance representing Earth. After all, the prerequisite for others to believe is to believe yourself. Facing everyone's eyes, Thor looked complicated. He felt that this was his black history. And until now, he doesn't feel that he should be exiled, the punishment of his father is too heavy. But if he wants to get help from ERP, he can't hide his origin. For a moment, he didn't know where to start. Does Mr. Thor have anything to hide? If you can't say it, it will affect our judgment of your threat level. Zinan will not be used to Thor, just give a warning. He just wants to destroy Thor's arrogance once and for all. Otherwise, if they want to complete the task assigned by the boss, Thor will be an unstable factor, and it will even bring them unnecessary trouble. Most importantly, Thor is a key part of their mission. No, there's nothing you can't say. Seeing Xinan's tone of dissatisfaction, Thor quickly waved his hand and said, "It's just that this matter is more complicated. I can't explain it clearly for a while. I don't know where to start. Since you can't resist, you can simply enjoy it silently. Isn't it just to disclose your black history? What was this humiliation compared to returning to Asgard? It doesn't matter." Xian waved his hands indifferently and said, "We have plenty of time. Mr. Thor can speak slowly, which is good for us all." Thor was speechless, and finally nodded. There was nothing he could do about this feeling of aggrieved, but he couldn't resist. Who made him worse than an ordinary person now? If there is a chance to let him regain his divine power, this group of people may not be able to do anything to him. Ding! Thor's emotional value plus 1333. Thinking wildly in his heart, Thor took a deep breath and said, "Just a while ago, when I was the Prince of Asgard, I did something that angered my father, so he exiled me to the earth, and even." With that said, Thor gritted his teeth and clenched his fists tightly. "I even lost all my divine power. Maybe this is my father's punishment. Oh, I got it." Faced with Thor's slump, Xinan didn't care at all. He said with a businesslike look, "It's no wonder you don't have any divine power, even worse than ordinary people. It turns out that you were sealed by the God King." Hearing this, Thor blushed. "Don't tell me if you see through, brother. In front of so many people, are you sure it's appropriate for you to expose my embarrassing side directly?" If he didn't know that he couldn't beat Xinan, he would have done it directly. But suddenly he thought of what Xinan said just now. Seal? Could it be? As if realizing something, Thor raised his head, looked at Xinan and asked excitedly, "So can your ERP help me unlock the seal of divine power?" Ding! Thor's emotional value plus 2333. Chapter 31. Thor looked at Xinan expectantly. This sudden surprise caught him off guard, but it was more ecstasy and excitement. If he can really break the seal of divine power, then he is still Thor. Yes, but we can't. Facing Thor's expectant gaze, Xinan nodded and shook his head. Seeing this, Thor's mood sank to the bottom. He did not give up and asked, "What do you mean? If it is possible, why not? Why can't I understand what you are talking about?" Thor was a little dissatisfied, feeling that Xinan was playing tricks on himself. "Do you really think he is easy to bully? Even if you are stronger than me now, but there is a saying that 30 years in Hedong, 30 years in Hexi. Be careful when I get back my divine power, I will kill you guys." "Thor, don't worry." Jane Foster on the side suddenly said, "According to what you said, the seal on your body was set by your father, so ordinary people can't lift it. I think this is Mr. Xinan's original intention." Ding! Jane Foster's emotional value is plus 588. "That's right, Miss Foster is smarter." Xinan glanced at Jane Foster approvingly. During this moment of getting along, he saw that Jane Foster had an ambiguous attitude towards Thor, obviously because she had a good impression of this alien visitor. Although it has not yet developed into love, there is indeed a trend in this regard. It's a pity that a certain stupid big man didn't notice it at all. "Ah, is that so?" Thor was a little embarrassed when he heard that. After being reminded by Jane Foster, he was also belatedly aware of it, and realized that it was he himself who carefully judged the heart of a gentleman. Facing an intruder like him, it's rare for someone to be amiable. On the contrary, he himself has no attitude of asking for help. If it were him, he would have turned the tables long ago. Ding! Thor's emotional value plus 888. "Ahem, what, I was a little anxious just now, you, don't mind." Thor stammers an apology. "I am afraid that Xian is also the first person who can make the majestic Thor condescend." Xian nodded, his attitude was neither salty nor weak. This makes Thor even more embarrassed. But in order to break the seal of divine power, he still cheekily asked, "So can you actually help me break the seal? If possible, I hope you can help me." After so many blows, he finally learned humility. This time the tone seemed a lot more sincere. Xian sees this, but he is not ready to agree to help, but wants to continue to hang Thor. He shook his head calmly and refused, can't. Why? Thor frowned again, standing up straight away. He stared at Xenan dissatisfied and said, since you said you could break the seal for me, why did you say no? Are you kidding me? Thor, calm down. Jane Foster on the side quickly got up to persuade. Xenan and the others have extraordinary backgrounds, how can you, an alien prince who has lost his divine power, be able to beat others? What's more, people are under the eaves. Are you begging for help? But at the moment Thor couldn't care less about that. He stared at Xenan dissatisfied, wanting Xenan to give a reasonable explanation. Xenan didn't speak, just had a cold face. Hee. But Bei Miao has no scruples, just sneered and mocked, where do you think this is? Who do you think you are? Why do you think we must help you? You. Thor was furious, wishing he could PK with the real Bei Miao. This is the guy who keeps taunting him. Even if he knew he couldn't beat him, but for the glory of the God of the North, he would fight to the end. But before he could make a move, Dong Shan quickly stood up to smooth things over and said, everyone, don't be impulsive, and speak well if you have something to say. Dong Shan hurriedly stood between Thor and Bei Miao. He comforted Bei Miao first, then looked at Thor and shook his head and said, Mr. Thor, don't worry, we are not helping you, but because we can't do anything about it, as for the person who can help you. Speaking of Dong Shan's tone, he seemed to be scrupulous. But Thor asked directly, since someone can do it, let him come and help me lift the seal. Oops. Hearing this, Jane Foster cried out secretly. This Thor really speaks wildly. Even he, an outsider, felt very offended when he heard Thor's words. One can imagine how Dong Shan and others will feel. And it is true. Dong Shan's expression suddenly turned cold, and he said in a deep voice, Mr. Thor, please watch your words. RERP is not your subordinate, let alone your friend, even you have not passed our investigation yet. If the assessment fails, you may even face imprisonment. Dong Shan, who has always been a peacemaker, is rarely angry. And what he said completely let the atmosphere sink to the bottom. Then try it. Thor still scratched his neck to retort. At the moment, he was so hot-headed that he didn't even bother to care about the consequences. He just wanted to vent the frustration he suffered. The big deal is to die. Death in battle is the glory of all Asgard warriors. Thor you. Seeing this, Jane Foster was completely disappointed. Her affection for Thor fell to the bottom of her heart, and she felt that this man was unreasonable. Since he didn't appreciate it, she just sat back in her seat angrily. Hee. Bei Miao laughed even more disdainfully. Xenan didn't even bother to say anything. Only Dong Shan was patient and said in a deep voice, if you have this attitude, Mr. Thor, then I can officially announce that your threat assessment, Mr. Thor, will not pass. According to the ERP alien management regulations, we will imprison high-threat visitors. You have the right to remain silent, or to resist. But what you say and do will affect the follow-up evaluation and review. This is my last warning to you. Ding, Daisy Louise's mood value plus 666. Ding, Jane Foster's emotional value is plus 888. Ding, Thor's emotional value plus 1333. Chapter 32. Faced with Dong Shan's warning, Thor subconsciously wanted to break the can. But in the end he stopped abruptly. It wasn't that he changed suddenly, but that Jane Foster secretly pulled the corner of his clothes, making him hold back what he wanted to say. Apparently good Jane Foster couldn't bear to see Thor imprisoned in the end. Call. Taking a deep breath, Thor said in a muffled voice, I can cooperate with you. When he said this, he felt aggrieved, so he just said that he could cooperate, not that he was willing to cooperate. Dong Shan didn't care about this, nodded and said, then continue. With that said, he sat back in his original position. For the previous things, he didn't have any explanation, and there was no need to explain. You know it's Thor who wants them. So at least for now they don't need to explain to Thor. Captain, continue to evaluate. Dong Shan whispered towards Xenan. Xenan nodded, looked at Thor calmly and said, the background investigation has ended, and our evaluation of you is good, but your character and behavior habits are not qualified for me. In just one day, you have caused at least 3 conflicts, seriously disrupting social order. It's hard for me to imagine you staying on Earth for a long time. I believe that Miss Foster and Miss Louise have a deep understanding of this. As he spoke, he looked at Jane Foster and the two of them. Daisy Louise blushed and nodded like a chicken pecking at rice. Yes, yes, you are right. Daisy. Seeing this, Jane Foster was speechless. Can you take a stand? Although he is indeed handsome, you have to pay attention to your manners, otherwise you won't be able to catch up with him. After giving Daisy Louise a wink, she said, Mr. Zenan is right. Thor has indeed caused a lot of trouble, but I believe he is actually a kind person, but he is not used to life on Earth. If you are willing to give him some time, I believe he can change. Speaking of which, Jane Foster looked at Thor, winked and said, You say so, Thor. Thor wanted to speak out, to defend himself. Obviously those people provoked him first. But seeing Jane Foster's worried eyes, his heart trembled inexplicably, and those words were swallowed back by him. Ding, Thor's emotional value plus 888. Yes, Jane is right. Thor nodded, but then changed his tone, I can change, but if someone else provokes me first, I will never sit still. It's natural. Xin Nan didn't care at all and said, as long as you don't cause trouble and don't think about harming the Earth, you are free to do anything. As the conversation resumed, the atmosphere gradually eased. The two sides have a question and answer, which can be regarded as friendly. The questioning came to an end soon, and Xin Nan got up straight away, with a solemn look on his face. After our second evaluation, Mr. Thor, your final evaluation result is, average. You can continue to live on Earth, but you can't leave the monitoring of ERP. Until the threat factors on your body are completely eliminated. You have the right to refute, but we reserve the right to enforce it. At the moment Thor's temperament has been almost worn out. It's time to move on to the next part of the mission. Xin Nan muttered to himself, and on the surface remained calm. He asked directly, Is there anything Mr. Thor needs to add? No. Thor was silent for a long time, and finally responded sullenly. He can also be regarded as thoroughly seeing the situation. Knowing that the refutation is invalid, it is useless for him to say more, it is better to accept the reality honestly. What's more, who made him want to ask other people's ERP for help? Ding, Thor's emotional value plus 1333. In that case, today's conversation is over. I wish Mr. Thor a happy life on Earth. After Xin Nan finished speaking, he got up and left without stopping, forcing Wang Bimiao to follow closely behind. Daisy Louise looked eagerly at the backs of the two, her eyes were almost tearing up. Jane Foster was completely defeated by the nympho attribute of her best friend. Zenan is really popular with girls. Dongshan chuckled secretly, shrugged at Thor and said, Mr. Thor, this is the normal process of ERP, I hope you can understand, at least we have reached an agreement, right? Well, you're right. Thor nodded, looking relieved. Compared to Bimiao, who mocked him, and Xin Nan, who was businesslike, Dongshan was the best at speaking. At the moment, facing Dongshan, he rarely had a good face. Mr. Dongshan, Thinking of the seal on his body, Thor hesitation asked again and again, unwillingly, is there really no way to untie the seal on me? Hey, it's really not that we don't want to help. Dongshan's heart moved, but on the surface he said helplessly, you are well aware of the strength of God King Odin, the seal set by your father, I am afraid that only existences of the same level can break it. Indeed so. Thor agrees with that. But then his expression changed suddenly, and he looked at Dongshan with unchanged irascible eyes. What did Dongshan say just now? Since ERP can help him, doesn't that prove that in ERP, there is a strong man at the same level as his father? Hiss. It's so terrifying. Thor gasped suddenly. Unexpectedly, such a powerful strength is hidden in the small Midgard. Could it be that his previous knowledge of Midgard was false? That's the way it is. Seeing Thor's shock, Toshin sighed, to be honest, the Emperor of our ERP is not something you and I can get in touch with at all, and I am not qualified to invite that lord either. Emperor. Hearing this, Thor's heart trembled wildly. Ding, Thor's emotional value plus 2333. Chapter 33. Hearing the Emperor's name suddenly, Thor felt a sense of incomprehension. This name is really arrogant enough. Even his father can only call himself the God King, but ERP actually has a Lord Emperor, isn't this overwhelming his father? But thinking about the background of ERP, he is really not sure which of the two is stronger. But this also proves that ERP can indeed help him. It's a pity that he doesn't have the qualifications to invite others. Why? Thor sighs, dejected. Obviously, the opportunity to recover the divine power is close at hand, but it is so far away. The enthusiasm in his heart was extinguished in an instant. Everyone, let me send you back first. Dongshan led the crowd out of the burger shop, and said with a smile, I've delayed you for so long, if you don't mind, let me treat you all to a meal and apologize. Just eat. Thor directly refused, and then said, I want to drink, your Midgard wine is okay, although not as good as Asgard. After repeated blows, he now just wants to get drunk and relieve his worries. Jane Foster also shook her head and said, Daisy and I still have work to do, please ask Mr. Dongshan to send us off, and we can skip the meal. Will your captain be with you? Daisy Louise asked expectantly. Daisy. Jane Foster glared at her best friend dissatisfied. This woman is really ungrateful. After such a long delay, and then suddenly disappeared, Professor Eric must be very anxious. They have to go back and report that they are safe. Oh, it's just dinner, how long was the delay? Daisy Louise didn't care. Holding Jane Foster's arm, she looked at Dongshan eagerly. It's a pity that Dongshan shook his head and said, Sorry, our captain still has something to do. Hey? Is that so? Daisy Louise looked disappointed. Ignoring Daisy Louise's reaction, Toshin called everyone together and reminded, the satellite transmission will be started next, and there may be some discomfort. Satellite transmission. Jane Foster suddenly became interested. This kind of technology related to the space field overlaps with her research on astronomy, and it is famously attractive to her. If possible, she really wanted to study it. And Thor also brought up some nature a little bit. ERP's satellite delivery is very similar to Asgard's Bifrost. It's a pity that it can only be used on the Earth. Otherwise, he could use the teleportation satellite to return directly to Asgard. Miyajin, send us back. Dongshan said into the earphone. Everyone is also getting ready, thinking that they will be able to go back soon. But suddenly Dongshan's face changed, and he said in a deep voice, What? A hammer fell from the sky? What's going on? Are aliens coming again? Hammer. As if triggering some keyword, Thor exclaimed. He directly grabbed Dongshan's arm and shouted, Speak quickly, what hammer, is it Mjolnir? It must be my Mjolnir. Thor at the moment looked very emotional. Unexpectedly, when he was completely desperate, he could hear the news of Mjolnir. This immediately made him see the dawn of hope again. If he can get Mjolnir, maybe even without the help of others, he can break the seal in his body by himself. At that time, Thor will be resurrected with full blood. Ding, Thor's emotional value plus 2333. Mr. Thor, calm down. Throwing away Thor's hand, Dongshan said helplessly, You have to clarify the situation first, right? Besides, this is the work of our ERP, and it is impossible to disclose it to outsiders casually. I'm not an outsider, that's definitely my Mjolnir. Thor glared at Dongshan in displeasure and retorted. But Dongshan was not moved at all, and said in a businesslike way, So? What about the evidence? This. Thor was speechless for a moment. He didn't even see what the hammer looked like, so how could he prove it was Mjolnir? But then he said in a very firm tone, As long as you take me to see that hammer, I will prove it to you. Only I can hold Mjolnir. Dongshan didn't speak when he heard the words, but showed a somewhat hesitation expression. Thor suddenly became anxious when he saw this. But before he could say anything, Zinan and Bai Miao suddenly walked out of the burger shop. Dongshan, here comes the mission. Xian Nan said, looked directly at Thor and said, If what you say is true, the hammer must be Mjolnir. Because no one can shake it. That's right, that's Mjolnir. Thor yelled excitedly when he heard that. Jane Foster and Daisy Louise on the side also looked at everyone curiously. They are still in a state of being unaware of at the moment. What Mjolnir, Mjolnir, they couldn't understand what was being said. Ding, Daisy Louise's mood value plus 666. Ding, Jane Foster's emotional value is plus 888. Ding, Thor's emotional value plus 1333. Let's go. Xian Nan said something calmly. Immediately, he said to Miyajin who was on the opposite side of the headset, Miyajin, start the satellite transmission. I wish you success in your mission. In the research room, Miyajin gave a serious instruction. Then she directly started the satellite transmission. But seeing a beam of light breaking through the space, mapping from the outer space to the reverse world, directly enveloping Xian and the others. Then the light flashed, and everyone disappeared immediately. It was already in New Mexico when it reappeared. And for the sake of convenience, at the moment is the temporary base that Phil Coulson sent people to set up in front of everyone. Mjolnir, who fell from the sky, is inside the base. Chapter 34. What's going on? Why is there already someone here? Looking at the temporary base, Xenan looked serious. He didn't shy away from Thor and others, and directly communicated with Miyajin on the other side of the headset. Not long after the exchange ended. I'm late. Xian shook his head, frowned and said, the people from S.H.I.E.L.D have already blocked us one step ahead of us. It may be troublesome for us to get in touch with that hammer. No. Mjolnir is mine. Thor yelled in protest, and rushed out without hesitation. He directly wanted to rush into the base to find his hammer. The patrol personnel of S.H.I.E.L.D also discovered Thor and others immediately because of this, and immediately surrounded them while reporting to the higher authorities. The leader even warned Thor in a deep voice, FBI. Hands up. Go away. Thor didn't care, and was about to force his way in. For the hammer, he would never hesitate. In his mind, as long as he can see Mjolnir, he has a chance to touch the seal in his body. Then he'll be able to turn back into that high-spirited Thor. These puny Midgardians are nothing to worry about. Unfortunately. Do it. The leader gave a deep drink and took out a weapon from his waist. The same is true of the patrolling personnel next to it. A group of people directly surrounded Thor, activated the stun gun, and stabbed Thor's body fiercely. The sudden intense electricity directly knocked Thor to the ground. Just like before in the hospital, Thor was paralyzed on the ground and twitched continuously after being injected into a coma by those demons in white. At this moment, his mentality was broken, and he couldn't imagine that Midgard would be so terrifying. How can anyone be so scary? The group of white-clothed demons in the hospital possessed some kind of mysterious witchcraft potion, which could easily make him unconscious. At the moment these human beings were able to knock him down with lightning. This is simply a mockery of Chi Kuakuo. Think of him as a Thor. If he can't deal with those white-clothed demons, forget it. How can it not even stop the thunder and lightning? Thor. Seeing Thor captured, Jane Foster was suddenly worried. But soon she couldn't protect herself. All of them are surrounded by S.H.I.E.L.D agents because of Thor's involvement. The leader stared at Xian and the others and asked in a deep voice, "Who are you guys? This is an important military site, and idlers are not allowed to enter." Speaking of which, he escaped directly from the FBI's documents. On the certificate, it was showing FBI high-level agent, Anton Triplett. S.H.I.E.L.D really did a good job. All S.H.I.E.L.D agents never report their real names when they go out, and they all use the IDs of other organizations. Even if there were troubles, the FBI and others would only take revenge. FBI? I think it's S.H.I.E.L.D. Ignoring the situation of being surrounded, Xenan asked without answering, "Who is your leader this time? Phil Coulson, or Natasha Romanoff? Or Melinda? I want to talk to your leader. Who are you?" Anton Triplett was shocked, and looked at Xenan and the others with increasing vigilance. He even directly wanted his subordinates to do it. No matter where Xian and others are and where they came from, they are related to the mission of S.H.I.E.L.D, and no one or organization should try to make trouble. I advise you not to ask for trouble. Seeing the other party's thoughts, Xian calmly gave a warning. It's a pity that some people don't understand flattery at all. Do it. As Anton Triplett said, he immediately took the lead. He is a S.H.I.E.L.D level 6 elite agent. Not only was he completely unmoved by Xian's threat, he even felt a little ridiculous. Do you really think that just a few people who know S.H.I.E.L.D are amazing? He also knows Nick Fury. Humph. Courting death. Seeing the group of people rushing up, Bai Miao couldn't bear it at first. But he had no intention of bullying anyone. Stepping on the ground, he rushed directly to Anton Triplet, his sharp eyes flickering with mockery. Not to mention that he didn't transform into an armored warrior, he can hang and beat more than a dozen ordinary people under normal conditions. Even the elite of S.H.I.E.L.D. didn't care at all. Ah! Anton Triplet sneered, and punched hard. He was a high-level agent working for the FBI. Whether it's firearms or fighting, they are all the strongest at the time, so they were recruited into SHIELD. At the moment facing Bei Miao, he is confident that he can easily finish his opponent with one punch. But unfortunately, things backfired. Boom! Fist and fist collided, and a huge force struck, and Anton Triplet's face changed wildly. Immediately afterwards, he flew upside down and flew more than 10 meters away. What? The rest of the detectives were shocked. But before they could react, Bei Miao knocked everyone to the ground with 3 punches and 2 kicks, like a tiger entering a herd of sheep. Ding! Anton Triplet's mood value plus 233. Ding! Passerby's emotional value. Bei Miao stood among the crowd of wailing people, looking like a lonely master. Jane Foster and the 2 daughters were relieved. Fortunately, Bei Miao took action, otherwise they would have been arrested, just like Thor. But then Jane Foster became a little worried. The identities of these people are not simple at first glance. Now that a conflict broke out, what should they do next? Tread. Zinan walked directly to Anton Triplet. He knelt down and took out the other party's walkie-talkie. After some debugging, he said calmly to the connected walkie-talkie, "Mr. Phil Coulson, I'm Zinan, an ERP field officer, and I'm just outside your temporary base right now. You don't want your men to be missing arms and legs, do you?" "ERP? Sir, don't be impulsive." "Across the line," Phil Coulson exclaimed. He said anxiously, "Mr. Trouble, send the communication to Anton Triplet, and I will tell him." Ding! Phil Coulson's mood value is plus 1333. "Your boss is looking for you." Xian was non-committal, and directly threw the walkie-talkie to the other party. Anton Triplet caught it in a hurry. Although he was only punched, he felt a dull pain in his chest and almost vomited blood. Plus the dialogue between Zinan and Phil Coulson. No matter how stupid he is, he can see that Xian and the others are not easy to mess with. Chapter 35. Boss, I. Picking up the communicator, Anton Triplet wanted to say something. But Phil Coulson on the opposite side said in a deep voice, "Anton Triplet, you must entertain those people on the other side. If a conflict breaks out, apologize immediately. There must be no more trouble before I come back." "Yes, boss." Anton Triplet was shocked, and hurriedly agreed. He was more and more shocked by the identities of Yu Zinan and others. To be treated so seriously by Phil Coulson shows that the other party's background is definitely not simple. Ding! Anton Triplet's mood value plus 333. Is there a more powerful organization than S.H.I.E.L.D? Anton Triplet was in doubt. But on the surface, he squeezed out an ugly smile, nodded and said, "I'm sorry, sir, I offended you before, I apologize to you, and please don't remember the villains." "Well, it's okay." Xian looked indifferent, waved his hands and said, "Take us in, find a room, and wait for your boss to come back together." "Good." Hearing Zinan's uncompromising tone, Anton Triplet gritted his teeth. But in the end he still did not refuse Zinan's request. A group of people went directly to the temporary base, including Thor, who was knocked to the ground by electricity. Definitely Xian and others were invited in respectfully. And Thor was dragged in by 2 big men. Ding! Thor's emotional value plus 666. Because of the previous episode, Xian and the others received a warm reception, but they should be vigilant. After all, there is that hammer in this temporary base. If something went wrong, Anton Tripoli knew he couldn't take responsibility. "Everyone, please drink tea, our boss will be back soon." Anton Tripoli was careful, for fear of offending Zinan and others. These are all fierce people who do nothing when they disagree. Mr. Tripoli is being polite. The good old man Dongshan nodded with a smile. Xian and Bei Miao sat there silently, neither speaking nor thinking of drinking tea. This immediately put more pressure on Anton Tripoli. But fortunately, Xian and others are more peaceful. Apart from being relatively cold, there is no other action, which is considered a blessing in misfortune. And Anton Tripoli couldn't help but suspect the identity of this group of people. Time passed in this anxious atmosphere. Thor, who was electrocuted before, was also under the care of Jane Foster, and soon regained consciousness. Don't look at Thor's loss of divine power, but the strong physique of the Protoss is still there. It's just that Thor, as Thor, is not immune to lightning? Well, there is a problem here. Could it be that besides Loki, Thor is actually adopted, right? Tread, tread. Half an hour later, there were hurried footsteps outside the door. Then Phil Coulson pushed the door open. Through the opened door, you can also see a group of staff members who came back with them, carrying research equipment and stacks of paper materials. Oh, isn't this Mr. Dongshan and Bai Miao? Phil Coulson greeted warmly as soon as he came in. But when he saw Xian Nan and Thor and others, he was obviously surprised. He always felt that the atmosphere in the room was inexplicably weird. Who are these? Phil Coulson asked curiously. He looked at Dongshan. Judging from the seats in the room, it was obvious that Zenan was the leader of the group. Dongshan and Zenan were sitting beside them. The three of Thor and Jane Foster sat alone. Obviously these are two different groups. After making a simple judgment, Phil Coulson was in a state of surprise, feeling an ominous premonition inexplicably. Ding! Phil Coulson's mood value is plus 888. Hehe, hello Mr. Phil Coulson. Dongshan smiled and shook hands with Phil Coulson, embarrassed to say, visiting rashly without prior notice, I hope Mr. Curso can forgive me. It's okay, I welcome you to trouble me. Cole also waved his hands enthusiastically. Immediately, he randomly found a seat and sat down, staring directly at Dongshan. The purpose of wanting him to be a referral was self-evident. Oh, look at my memory, I forgot to introduce you. With an apologetic face, Dongshan quickly pointed to Zenan and said, this is our captain, Xian Nan. Hello, Captain Zenan. Polite greeting from Phil Coulson. And in his heart, he couldn't help guessing Xian Nan's strength. After all, he was the captain. Xian Nan is definitely not an ordinary person who can make Bai Wang his subordinate. Bai Miao, are you polite? Hi Mr. Phil Coulson. Xian Nan's expression was slightly relaxed, and he looked at Phil Coulson approvingly and nodded. As the saying goes, being famous is not as good as getting to know each other. I am very envious of S.H.I.E.L.D. for having such a shrewd and capable member. Nick Fury is really discerning. Hearing this, Phil Coulson was shocked. At the moment, his heart was greatly shaken. You must know that Nick Fury has always kept a low profile. Even some agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. may not know the identity of their chief. But Zenan is an outsider, but he tells Nick Fury's name right away. And that's not what shocked him the most. What makes him cherish the most is Xian Nan's tone when he said this, as if he knew S.H.I.E.L.D. very well. This immediately made him feel as if all the secrets had been seen through. It was as if in front of Zenan, neither Phil Coulson nor S.H.I.E.L.D. had any secrets to speak of. Realizing this, Phil Coulson broke out in a cold sweat. What all intelligence organizations are most afraid of is identity exposure. Once others know all the details, S.H.I.E.L.D. will be restrained everywhere, and it will not be far from disbanding. Ding! Phil Coulson's mood value is plus 1333. Chapter 36. Hehe, Captain Zenan was joking. Suppressing the shock in his heart, Phil Coulson squeezed out an ugly smile. He quickly changed the subject and asked, before my subordinates offended you all, please forgive me Captain Zenan, I don't know why you are here today. As the saying goes, those who come are not good, and those who are good will not come. Through the short time before, Phil Coulson can see the behavior of ERP. That is definitely more vigorous than SHIELD. Now that Zenan and the others came suddenly, and they still appeared in this temporary base, they definitely didn't come here for nothing. It's even very possible that the other party came here for that hammer. For a moment, Phil Coulson thought of many possibilities. And for these possibilities, he has also prepared his psychological expectations and how to deal with them. S.H.I.E.L.D's research on that hammer has now yielded nothing. From Xian Nan and others, he may be able to take this opportunity to learn about the details of hammer, and even get access to more information about ERP. Ding! Phil Coulson's mood value is plus 666. Mr. Phil Coulson is really quick to talk. Zenan smiled and nodded, but he didn't pay attention to Phil Coulson's question at all. He turned to point at Thor, who was full of resentment, and said, "Introduce to Mr. Phil Coulson, this is Thor, the Prince of Asgard, and the owner of the hammer you are studying. If Xin doesn't speak, it's enough, and if he speaks, it will be a blockbuster." These words immediately stunned Phil Coulson. Thor. Phil Coulson looked at Thor with difficulty, feeling like he had misheard. "Obviously, I was just asking about your background. Just like when playing cards, I tentatively play a small 3 to see what cards the next player has. But Xin was lucky, and he played Wang Jia backhanded. Isn't this shooting mosquitoes with cannons? The key is to listen to what you are saying. Thor, Prince of Asgard, Master of the Hammer. If he remembered correctly, these rankings should appear in fairy tales or dramas, right?" Phil Coulson once suspected that he had heard it wrong. But seeing Zenan's expression was indifferent, Dongshan and the others were also unmoved. Apparently this is the truth. Ding! Phil Coulson's mood value plus 2333. Call. Taking a deep breath, Phil Coulson tried to calm himself down. He suppressed the shock in his heart and asked, "Captain Zenan, are you joking? Isn't Thor and Asgard a Norse mythology story? You actually told me that this gentleman is Thor? How is this possible?" "Humph. Humans are ignorant, and I am Thor." Before Zenan could answer, Thor, who was already holding back his anger, shouted, "Give me back Mjolnir, you thieves, or you will meet the wrath of Thor." The thought of the hammer being so close at hand made Thor panic to death. And this group of humans dared to take it for their own. If he hadn't lost his divine power, he would definitely teach Phil Coulson and others a lesson and let them know the price of angering Thor. But unfortunately, Phil Coulson became more and more suspicious when he saw this. It's not that he doesn't believe what Zenan said. It's mainly Thor's reaction. How does it look like the Thor in the myth? You call this a prince? Calm down, Thor. Jane Foster pulls Thor awkwardly. Obviously they talked well, but it's not impossible to get Mjolnir back. But Thor is fine. It's obvious that you want something from others, but you're still so arrogant in the end. You are really not afraid of being arrested, are you? Jane, don't stop me. Thor broke away from Jane Foster with his backhand, and still shouted, Mjolnir belongs to me. It is an artifact bestowed on me by the great God King. You'd better not take his idea. This. Phil Coulson was completely speechless. He ignored Thor's clamor and turned to look at Zenan. And Xin also rolled his eyes speechlessly. With Thor's well-developed limbs and simple mind, it's no wonder he was played around by Loki. But this is also good, just convenient for them to complete the task of the boss. Thor, calm down. Zenan glanced at Thor lightly, and said in a deep voice, this is Earth, not you Asgard, and you don't want to be imprisoned forever for the rest of your life. Hearing this, Thor, who was still clamoring all kinds of things, suddenly froze. He has no doubt that ERP has this strength. Although he really wanted to take back Mjolnir immediately, but Zenan even spoke up, and he could only sit back in his original position resentfully. But when he looked at Phil Coulson, it still looked like he wanted to eat someone. Ding! Thor's emotional value plus 1333. Is this man really Thor? Phil Coulson watched silently, wondering. He didn't think that Xin and others would join forces to act to deceive him. But the facts in front of him were too unbelievable. He might be able to accept ERP and Shadow Realm, after all, there are also traces of the mysterious side on the Earth, and superpowers emerge endlessly. But the myths and legends came true, which made it hard for him to accept. After all, Norse mythology has been around for nearly 1,000 years. Could it be that the Thor in front of him is actually an old monster who has lived for thousands of years? Impossible. Absolutely impossible. Who has lived for thousands of years and still looks like a reckless man with well-developed limbs and a simple mind? Not to mention the legendary Thor who controls thunder and lightning. If Thor is Thor, then he is Phil Coulson or God King Odin. Thor, UMMP. Chapter 37. Make Mr. Phil Coulson laugh. Too lazy to pay attention to Thor, Zenan looked directly at Phil Coulson and said, but he is Thor. It's unbelievable, but it's true. Well, I believe that your organization will not be aimless. Phil Coulson nodded, but then shook his head and said, however, I hope Captain Zinnan can clarify the details, otherwise I can't explain it to the higher authorities. While speaking, he quietly turned on the recording function. This is the quality of being a professional agent. Even the recording equipment on his body is still connected to the S.H.I.E.L.D network in real time, and the images will be uploaded to the S.H.I.E.L.D database synchronously. Since he is an 8th level agent, only people higher than him can view these materials. Like at the moment Nick Fury at S.H.I.E.L.D headquarters. Are these people? Inside the director's office, Nick Fury looked gloomy. He stared at the picture in front of him. Through Phil Coulson's perspective, he had a panoramic view of Xinan and the others, and then he was curious about what happened. Apparently Phil Coulson wasn't going to turn on the recording equipment. The identity of this group of people is definitely not simple. Thinking of what happened before, he couldn't help guessing. Ding! Nick Fury's mood value plus 1111. Under the watchful eye of Nick Fury, Xinan in the picture slowly opened his mouth and said, "We definitely won't embarrass Mr. Phil Coulson, but this matter is very involved. After all, Thor is the Prince of Asgard, so I also hope that US.H.I.E.L.D can cooperate with the ERP work." This. Hearing this, Phil Coulson called himself an expert. Why is this so familiar to him? Isn't it S.H.I.E.L.D's consistent style to first emphasize the seriousness of the problem and then obtain the cooperation of the parties? Now that the same routine is being used by others on him, he feels that everyone else is stupid. On the other side, Nick Fury suddenly became interested. Sure enough, as he expected, the group of people Phil Coulson at the moment faced were members of the mysterious ERP organization. But his doubts are the same as Phil Coulson before him. ERP suddenly appeared in New Mexico, is it also for that hammer? This immediately made him even more curious. Ahem, what is that? Facing Xinan's gaze, Phil Coulson nodded and said, "Whether I can cooperate with you or not is not up to me personally, but if Captain Xinan's words are true, I will do my best to fight for the rights in this regard." Hehe, thank you Mr. Phil Coulson. Xinan nodded with a smile, and didn't pay attention to Phil Coulson's answer. He believed Phil Coulson would ask for a yes. But at that time, as the so-called Feng Shui turns, the initiative will be in their hands. From the mouth of the boss, he knows a lot about SHIELD. Long before departure, the boss taught him how to deal with this group of agents. The boss is really good at predicting things. These agents are really smart, but it's a pity. With a sneer to himself, Xinan said with a serious face on the surface, "One day ago, our ERP detected meteorites falling from the sky. One is Mjolnir discovered by US.H.I.E.L.D, and the other is Thor. We suspect that Thor and Mjolnir have descended to Earth, and there may be other secrets behind it. During the critical period of the revival of the film world, all unstable factors must be ruled out. Besides, this incident involves the Asgard Protoss. Our ERP must treat it with caution and investigate the truth as soon as possible." Speaking of this matter, Xinan's tone was very heavy. And what he said was ambiguous. But the more this is the case, the more it can arouse Phil Coulson's curiosity, and even startle the eyeballs of a black marinated egg. Glancing somewhere on Phil Coulson's body, Xinan said in a deep voice, "I hope S.H.I.E.L.D can cooperate with ERP work." Silence, a long silence. Facing Xinan's request again, Phil Coulson hesitated, feeling that this matter suddenly became difficult. From Xinan's words, he noticed several key words. Both Mjolnir and Thor came from out of space. Now is a critical period for the recovery of the film world. Behind Thor is the legendary Asgard Protoss, even ERP is afraid of it. If what Xinan said is true, this matter is indeed of great importance. ERP and the present world of the Shadow World, Thor and Mjolnir who are suspected of being aliens, these things happen too coincidentally. But coincidences don't happen one after another. Either there is a black hand behind this, or the troubled times are approaching, and there are hidden murderous intentions. Supernatural beings, aliens, the world is becoming more and more dangerous. Ding, Phil Coulson's mood value is plus 888. Ding, Nick Fury's mood value plus 1111. Sorry, Captain Xinan, I can't make a decision on this matter. Phil Coulson finally shook his head in refusal. But then he changed his tone and said, "Whether what Captain Xinan said is true, we need to confirm it. At the same time, I have no right to decide this matter. I need to report to the superior and get permission at the moment. Well, please Mr. Phil Coulson. Xin Nan nodded, non-committal. Phil Coulson nodded, got up and left immediately. Before leaving, he took a deep look at Thor, still unable to believe that the other party was the legendary Thor. But if all this is true, the seriousness of this matter, with his authority, is indeed not qualified to make a decision. He had to contact his director as soon as possible to report the matter. Chapter 38. And in the room. What did you mean just now? I was just exiled. The situation is not as serious as you said. Thor stared at Xenan, and shouted in dissatisfaction, it's obviously a very simple thing, just give me back Mjolnir. Stop it, Thor. Jane Foster reluctantly pulled Thor. This guy really has no eyesight at all, and he is clearly negotiating. It's fine if you don't help, can you stop making trouble? If she hadn't been on a thief ship and became more and more curious about the truth behind this incident, she would really be too lazy to talk to Thor. If you want to stay here, please. Xenan is not used to Thor, so he directly issued the order to evict the guest. Thor immediately sat back in his seat angrily. How could he leave without getting Mjolnir? This might be his only chance. But for Xin Nan and others, he became even more dissatisfied. The group even suspected that Asgard had other plans. Humph, how ridiculous! Thor thought disdainfully. Asgard is the lord of the 9 realms, a mere Midgard, what is there to covet? These Midgardians really like to make a fuss. Ding, Thor's emotional value plus 666. Not to mention what Thor thinks. Phil Coulson, who left at the moment, quickly returned to his office and contacted his director immediately. My lord, my side. The communication was connected, and Phil Coulson immediately reported the information to him. But Nick Fury interrupted directly, I know the situation. What the other party said is likely to be true. I want you to collect as much information as possible. It is best to take the right to handle this matter in your own hands. But director, we don't know anything, so we have no way to start. Facing Nick Fury's order, Phil Coulson looked bitter. According to the existing intelligence analysis, the hammer indeed conforms to Norse mythology, so there is a high probability that what Xenan said is true. This also proves the existence of the Asgard Protoss. Facing such a powerful race, a little carelessness may trigger a diplomatic crisis. No wonder ERP is so serious. Nick Fury asked him to do his best to collect intelligence, and even seized the initiative. Isn't this intentionally endangering Fat Tiger? I think this matter still needs to be discussed in the long term. Phil Coulson spoke his mind right away. It's a pity that Nick Fury directly vetoed it, and said in an uncompromising tone, I don't want you to think, I want me to think. I allow you to use all available power, and make sure to investigate more relevant information without turning evil ERP. Yes, Director. Phil Coulson was silent for a moment, then nodded heavily. Although this task is arduous, it is of great importance and does not allow him to bargain. But what to do, he couldn't help but have a headache. Didn't they want that hammer? Just at the moment, Nick Fury's voice sounded again. Just listen to his meaningful tone and say, since you can't research anything, let's make it public and let the ERP group try it out. Hey, so it can still be like this. Phil Coulson's eyes lit up when he heard this. He immediately agreed, hung up the communication and left the office directly. Sure enough, the chief of the bureau has a solution. Although Nick Fury didn't say it clearly, he could hear the deep meaning in the other party's words. Mjolnir is an artifact in myths and legends. And it is true. They used countless methods, but they couldn't shake Mjolnir. Simply disclose Mjolnir directly. In this way, we can be a good friend, make friends with ERP and Thor, and at the same time prove the authenticity of this matter. Not long after, Phil Coulson returned. He pushed the door straight in and said with a smile, everyone, our director has agreed, you can get close to that hammer, and S.H.I.E.L.D will fully cooperate with your work. Great. Take me there. Thor stood up abruptly. He ran up to Phil Coulson excitedly and couldn't wait to leave. Hee, take it easy, Mr. Thor. Phil Coulson smiled and shook Thor's hand. Seeing that Thor is so happy, he is also very satisfied, and feels that the plan has begun to bear fruit. At least he's got what appears to be Thor's favor. I don't know what Captain Xenan wants. Without showing the slightest abnormality, Phil Coulson turned to look at Xian Nan and the others. And Zinan also nodded and said, "There is nothing you can do." Phil Coulson's reaction was as expected by the boss. He naturally had no reason to refuse. Anyway, after losing his divine power, Thor couldn't hold Mjolnir at all, and he had to ask them for help. No matter what S.H.I.E.L.D is up to, the initiative is always in their hands. Unless S.H.I.E.L.D can help Thor break the seal. But is it possible? The seal set by the god King Odin, unless it is a strong man of the same level, there is no way to break the seal in Thor's body. It's not that Zinan despises S.H.I.E.L.D, well, he just despises SHIELD. Didn't care about Phil Coulson's little thoughts. After Zinan, the captain, agreed, the group immediately set off from Mjolnir. At the same time, a beam of colored light descended from the wilderness. A formation pattern was instantly burned on the grass. And in the very center of the circle, a man in a fine attire stood silently, with a cunning look in his eyes. Is this Midgard? It's really filthy. Chapter 39. Thor, that stupid big man, it's really miserable to be exiled to Midgard. Loki shook his head, but there was no pity on his face. On the contrary, the corner of his mouth was filled with pride and joking. Look to the east where Mjolnir landed. He came to Earth this time with the help of Bifrost, one of which was to meet his idiot brother, and the other was to try to get back Mjolnir. No matter how you say it is an artifact, you can't just throw it away as trash. Thinking of this, the man suddenly became jealous. Their father is really eccentric. Obviously everyone is a son, but the other party gave Thor Mjolnir, but he Loki has nothing. Snort. Thinking of the current situation in Asgard, Loki said proudly, "Children make the choice, adults all want it. My good brother, the new king of Asgard is here to see you." S.H.I.E.L.D temporary base. Led by Phil Coulson, the group soon arrived at Mjolnir's location. At the moment Mjolnir stands quietly in the crater. Those researchers have been expelled by Phil Coulson in advance. After all, Mjolnir belongs to Thor, and it is too impolite to study in front of others. Even after such a long time, they still haven't researched anything. Mjolnir. This is my hammer. Upon seeing Mjolnir, Thor cried out in excitement. He couldn't wait to flip through the steel frame, jumped off the crater, and quickly ran to stand in front of Mjolnir. I finally see you again. It's like seeing a lover, Thor is affectionate. He reached out and stroked Mjolnir. The familiar touch made him uncontrollably excited, as if he had seen the hope of breaking the seal. On the steel platform, Xian Nan and others watched this scene indifferently. They are also curious about this legendary artifact. Zinan and the others are very clear that Thor cannot hold Mjolnir at all unless he can pass the test of God King Odin. When Thor's hope is shattered, they can carry out the next plan. What about Thor? I think it's the hammer god. Wang Bai Miao was forced to sneer secretly. Before they left, the boss told them about Asgard. And he also learned a lot about Thor. Although this guy is known as Thor, if there is no Mjolnir, even the fighting power is not as good as their armored warriors. But he had to admit that the combat power of the artifact was still terrifying. Perhaps only the green light ring given to Zinan by the boss can defeat Thor in the form of the hammer god. Not to mention the small thoughts in Bai Miao's heart. Meanwhile, Jane Foster looks at Thor in astonishment. This guy, shouldn't he be a fetishist? Are aliens so open? Seeing Thor being so affectionate, she was dumbfounded. You know she had a crush on Thor at first. But if the other party is a fetish, then she really can't accept it, especially Thor likes a hammer. In contrast, Phil Coulson's reaction was very calm. He silently watches Thor's reaction. From Thor's reaction, he felt that it was not pretending, which also proved the truth of Zinan's previous statement. Although it cannot be used as conclusive evidence, it is a fact if there are more clues. It's up to Thor to pick up Mjolnir. Mjolnir, please grant me strength. Help me break the seal set by my father. Under the eyes of everyone, Thor slowly grasped the handle of the hammer. His excited body was shaking. With great anticipation, he violently tried to pick up Mjolnir. Then, the hammer does not move, nothing happens. What? Thor looked stunned. Immediately, he stretched out both hands directly, holding the handle of the hammer at the same time, trying to pick up Mjolnir even harder. But unfortunately, things backfired. Mjolnir remained unmoved. No matter what Thor did, not even flushing from exhaustion and panting, Mjolnir couldn't move. The cruel facts immediately made Thor feel that his life was gloomy. All hopes were completely shattered in an instant. Thor never expected that his father sealed his power and exiled him to Midgard. Even Mjolnir was dropped here. And now Mjolnir has abandoned him too. Think of him as a dignified Thor, but he has fallen into the current situation, unable to even hold his own weapon. This humiliation of Chiguakuo plunged him into even greater despair. No. No. Why is this happening? Thor roared, his eyes filled with blood. But no matter how you look at it, he seems to be incompetent and furious. When everyone on the steel platform saw this, their reactions were also different. What's going on? Isn't this Mjolnir? Why can't Thor pick it up? Is it because the power is sealed? Jane Foster looks at Thor with some sympathy. Seeing the other party's expression of lovelessness, impotence, and rage, she didn't know how to comfort him. After all, if she put herself in that situation, she might have the same reaction. The despair of being abandoned by the whole world. Just a little empathy, Jane Foster looked complicated, looking at Thor below with sympathy. At the moment, Zenan looked at Dongshan beside him. The two made eye contact. Dongshan turned over and jumped off the crater, walked up to Thor, and said comfortingly, "Mr. Thor, you don't have to be so desperate, don't you think Mjolnir's presence here is too deliberate?" What? Ding, Thor's emotional value plus 2333. Chapter 40. Sure enough. ERP has expected this, and even knows more inside information. Hearing Dongshan's words, Phil Coulson's heart skipped a beat. He guessed Thor couldn't afford Mjolnir. But now that the facts are in front of him, he also feels a little pity. After all, he wants to befriend Thor. What could be greater than the favor of sending charcoal in the snow? The importance of Mjolnir to Thor cannot be overstated. Too bad he had a good idea, but Thor couldn't have picked up Mjolnir, so he wouldn't owe them a favor for it. His plan died immediately. But Xinan and others are not the same, they seem to know more inside stories that are unknown. Dongshan's words were even more meaningful. But from a few words, he couldn't analyze any useful information at all, so he could only watch silently, anxious in his heart. Using Mjolnir to make friends with Thor failed, and helping Thor to break the seal is probably impossible. How should he complete the mission of the Director General? Ding, Phil Coulson's mood value is plus 888. What do you mean? Inside the crater, Thor grabbed Dongshan's arm and asked, Mjolnir appeared here, isn't it because my father is completely disappointed in me, and even Mjolnir doesn't want to see it again? In Thor's view, all this is his punishment. His father was extremely disappointed in him. But when he heard what Dongshan said, he was a little confused, but his heart was full of anticipation. Maybe there's a turnaround? On the steel frame platform, Phil Coulson and others also looked curiously. They also wanted to know what Dongshan could say. Mr. Thor, you think too much. Gently breaking free from Thor's hand, Dongshan shook his head and said, we have an old saying in Daxia that a tiger's poison does not eat its son. You are the prince of Asgard, and you are the new king in the future. How could your father and king abandon you? But Thor looked forlorn, smiled wryly and said, I did something stupid and angered my father, how could he forgive me? He thought things would turn around. But what Dongshan said was just to comfort him, and there was no way to change the current situation. It is an indisputable fact that he was exiled and even abandoned. No. Dongshan waved his hand, and said meaningfully, at first, I also thought you were exiled, but the appearance of Mjolnir just confirmed my guess. What's the meaning? Thor asked in bewilderment. Seeing Dongshan's swearing look, why can't he see anything abnormal? Wasn't Mjolnir abandoned by his father? Ding, Thor's emotional value plus 666. Mr. Thor is really a fan of the authorities. Dongshan shook his head with a smile, the expression on his face became more determined. Thor and the others were suddenly even more puzzled. But Dongshan didn't give any explanation, instead he asked rhetorically, what do you think the earth is Midgard, in the eyes of you and your father, what kind of place is it? Midgard? Isn't it one of the 9 realms? Thor is distracted, and he doesn't care about his grief. He said without hesitation, thousands of years ago, my father ruled the 9 realms of the Protoss, and Midgard was included in the territory of Asgard at that time. But because Midgard is barren, Asgard seldom comes here. And my being exiled to Midgard this time is also my father's punishment. I'm afraid he won't even want to see me again for the rest of his life. While talking, Thor emo again. But Phil Coulson and the others twitched their mouths helplessly, greatly shocked in their hearts. Good guy. I call it a good guy. Did the Earth actually belong to Asgard's territory? Would they still have to salute Thor? What an international joke. Can live for thousands of years at will, and God King Odin can conquer the 9 realms, so how powerful is Asgard? While feeling ridiculous, Phil Coulson's heart was full of dignity. Of course they may not recognize the affiliation. But in the face of absolute strength, once Asgard wants to rule the Earth, do they really have the ability to resist? No, maybe there is. Glancing at Xian and the others, Phil Coulson also emoted. Why does he feel like a piece of trash? Obviously S.H.I.E.L.D is the organization that claims to protect the world. But in the face of this series of changes, their S.H.I.E.L.D has been reduced to a foil instead, and the initiative has always been in the hands of ERP. It seems that there is little hope of completing the task assigned by the Director General. Ding! Phil Coulson's mood value is plus 1333. Mr. Thor is really quick to talk. Facing Thor's answer, Dongshan smiled and praised. But then he changed his tone and asked, but do you think this is true? Midgard has a population of hundreds of millions, and there are as many strong people as there are clouds. It is not inferior to Asgard, right? This. Hearing this, Thor's expression was shocked. Yes, is Midgard barren? Before he came to Midgard, he believed very firmly in the records in the ancient books. But at the moment he was directly asked by Dongshan, and he was speechless. Asgard's population is only a few 100,000, not even comparable to a small town on Earth, and the number of people is directly crushed. As for the number of strong ones? Although everyone in Asgard is like a dragon, is Midgard weak? Just like Dongshan and the others in front of him. Although he has never fought against each other, judging from his experience in countless battles, the strength of the opponent is definitely not inferior to him. And behind Dongshan and others, there is an even more mysterious ERP organization. That Lord Emperor is even more suspected of being at the level of a god king. Midgard, which has so many powerful people, can't be described as barren even if it is conservatively estimated. So why are those ancient books recorded like that? There is a problem here. Ding! Thor's emotional value plus 2333, PS, are there any brothers who are watching? The author Jun Sapo rolled on his knees and begged for some flower evaluation tickets. Ying ying ying, I wish you all the big guys, everyone, sing and sing every night, and never die. Chapter 41. Did the father do it on purpose? I still don't know. Surprised, Thor asked directly, I don't understand, even if Midgard is not inferior to Asgard, what does this have to do with my being exiled? Phil Coulson and others also cast curious eyes. They also want to know the truth behind it. From the current clues, they couldn't see anything abnormal at all, so what did Dongshan want to say? Captain, can you tell me? Dongshan didn't answer, but looked to Zinan for advice. Everyone immediately looked at Xian in unison. Say it. Xian nodded lightly, and said in a deep voice, God King Odin sent his son here without any discussion, and we don't have to worry about the so-called agreement. His agreement? What is that? Hearing this remark, everyone suddenly felt confused. Phil Coulson frowned even more. Although he failed to make friends with Thor, he seemed to hear something great from Zinan's words. Is there any agreement between the God King and Midgard? Ding! Daisy Louise's mood value plus 555. Ding! Jane Foster's emotional value is plus 666. Ding! Phil Coulson's mood value is plus 888. What agreement? Thor asked directly. Why had he never heard of the agreement Dongshan mentioned before? For a moment he was even more confused. For some reason, he always felt that something shocking to the world might be said from Dongshan's mouth. Ding! Thor's emotional value plus 1333. This matter has to start with the invasion of the dark dimension. Facing everyone's curious eyes, Dongshan said in a deep voice, when your father conquered the 9 realms and came to Midgard, he happened to encounter the invasion of dimension demons. Multi-dimensional God King powerhouses invaded Midgard at the same time. Dormammu, Master of the Dark Dimension. The Lord of Hell, Mephitos. The true Master of the Shadow Realm, the Lord. 3 God King powerhouses who have reached level Godfather invaded the dimension where Midgard is located at the same time, trying to carve up Midgard and even the entire 9 realms. The situation was precarious at the time, and Midgard was almost completely lost at one point. Speaking of this matter, Dong Shan looked very dignified. And his tone became low. Everyone present, including Thor, were all infected by the scene he said, and their hearts couldn't help but rise. Phil Coulson and others are not aware of the severity and do not know what the concept of level Godfather is. But Thor looked at Toshin in disbelief. Level Godfather strong? That is a great existence that can easily destroy the planet. How can Midgard stop it? What about the 3 level Godfathers? Facing Thor's questioning, Toshin said disdainfully, our ERP has the Emperor, and Kamartaj has the Sorcerer Supreme, who is also the strongest who has reached level Godfather. In terms of top combat power, it is not weaker than any dimensional world. What? Earth also has a level Godfather? Or 2? Hearing this, Thor suddenly exclaimed. Phil Coulson and others were also horrified. They never expected that the Earth, which has lived for so many years, still hides so many secrets. They had never heard of ERP and Kamartaj before. Not to mention the so-called level Godfather. At this moment, when they suddenly heard that there is such a terrifying powerhouse among the secret organizations on the Earth, everyone was shocked beyond measure. Ding, Daisy Louise's emotional value plus 888. Ding, Jane Foster's emotional value is plus 888. Ding, Phil Coulson's mood value is plus 1111. Ding, Thor's emotional value plus 2333. The system prompts sounded one after another. This made Lin Fan, who was training in the reverse world, laugh from ear to ear. Sure enough, you still have to do things to harvest emotional value. With the help of the Thor plot this time, he has already obtained more than 30,000 emotional points, and this is just the beginning. Thor is really powerful. With a chuckle, Lin Fan couldn't help but look forward to it. This time, we will definitely reap a wave. We must know that as Thor descends to the Earth, the battle in New York is not far away, and then will be the stage for harvesting greater emotional value. The influence of a major event involving an alien invasion is simply extraordinary. And he must not miss the opportunity to harvest emotional value. But if he wants to participate in the New York War, his current strength is obviously not enough, he must continue to draw lots. While pondering secretly, Lin Fan immediately prepared to continue training. His own strength should also be improved. But at the moment, the system that just took advantage of the opportunity sounded the notification tone again. Ding, Loki's emotional value plus 1333. Hey? Loki. Hearing this, Lin Fan immediately frowned. Was Loki already here? With the help of the system's ability, he intervened in the perspective of Tosuji and others, but did not discover the existence of Loki. But with Loki's secretive ability, it should be easy to hide from detection. Apparently Loki at the moment is in the makeshift base. It's really lively. Loki is here, so don't miss this opportunity to harvest. Lin Fan muttered under his breath, already thinking about how to use Loki. This guy is a born villain. Without any hesitation, Lin Fan immediately sent a voice transmission to Xin Nan and the others. Zinan, Dongshan, by Miao, Loki has sneaked into the S.H.I.E.L.D temporary base, you should pay attention next time. Chapter 42. In the temporary base. Lin Fan's voice sounded in the ears of Zinan and the others. The evil god Loki? Isn't that Thor's brother? Xin Nan and Bei Miao looked at each other, reached an agreement silently, and silently raised their points vigilance. Dongshan's eyes flashed in the crater below. Midgard is not as simple as you think. Without showing any abnormality, Dongshan said to himself, the dimensional war lasted for a long time. The Emperor fought against the Holy Lord and the Lord of Hell alone, and the Sorcerer Supreme was Dormammu who blocked the Dark Dimension. And the arrival of your father brought a turning point in this battle. As soon as this remark came out, everyone was taken aback. Jane Foster and the 2 girls breathed a sigh of relief. At that moment of crisis, if God King Odin chooses to invade Midgard, I am afraid that the Earth will be destroyed long ago. Fortunately, the Earth side won in the end and repelled the enemy's invasion. Look at it this way. Midgard and Asgard are still allies. My royal father. Hearing such a secret, Thor couldn't believe it. So you mean, my father helped Midgard repel the dimensional invasion? It's not true. Dongshan shook his head, proudly said, early before your father's arrival, the Emperor repelled Mephitos, the Lord of Hell, and severely injured the Holy Lord of the Shadow Realm, suppressing an incarnation of the Holy Lord. The origin of the Holy Lord was injured, and the deity retreated to the Shadow Realm, but he has been trying to make a comeback for so many years. With the exit of the three-level godfathers, only Kamartaj Sorcerer Supreme is left, still entangled with Dormammu of the Dark Dimension. Your father just helped the Sorcerer Supreme repel Dormammu. Speaking of this matter, Dongshan seemed impassioned. It was as if he had been there in the first place. But think about it too. The battle between six-level godfathers is definitely a shocking event, and it is enough to be recorded in the annals of history. Everyone in the room couldn't help but feel excited when they heard it. Ding, Daisy Louise's mood value plus 555. Ding, Jane Foster's emotional value is plus 666. Ding, Phil Coulson's mood value is plus 888. According to Dongshan, only the Holy Master of the Shadow Realm suffered heavy losses in that battle, and an incarnation outside the body was suppressed by the Emperor of ERP. That is to say, the sudden emergence of the Shadow Realm is actually for. Phil Coulson feels like he's discovered a great secret. If all of this is true, then is this the reason for the sudden appearance of Shadow Realm and ERP? In order to understand and save the incarnation of the Holy Lord. What's more, it directly induces the Holy Lord himself to come down to the earth again. This may be the reason for the revival of the film world. And ERP is trying its best to prevent it. Combining many clues, Phil Coulson feels that the truth is almost inseparable. Daolong in the Shadow World. Xian Nan of ERP and others. Prince of Asgard Thor. Mjolnir. With so many facts in front of him, the truth was ready to come out, and Phil Coulson could not allow any doubts. Knowing so many secrets, he wished he could contact his chief immediately. But in the end Phil Coulson forced himself to endure it. Inside the crater. It turned out that my father helped Midgard, not conquered Midgard. Thor was a little emotional, but he didn't expect the truth to be like this. Your father is indeed very important. Dongshan nodded, but then shook his head and said, but to be more precise, your father is not only helping Midgard, but also helping yourself. Hey? What does this mean? Thor was puzzled again. Dongshan took a deep look at Thor, and said word by word, Dark Elf. Ragnarok. Thor's pupils shrank and his whole body trembled. Ding, Thor's emotional value plus 2333. Ding, Loki's emotional value plus 1333. Hearing Toshin mention the coming of darkness, and even Ragnarok, Thor figured it all out in an instant. No wonder his father would help Midgard resist the invasion of dimensional demons. No wonder Dongshan mentioned the so-called agreement before. It turned out that his father's help to Midgard was actually to fight against the Dark Elves, but also to deal with the prophesied Ragnarok. The Dark Elves are a very terrifying race that intends to bring darkness to the entire universe. At the beginning, Asgard paid a great price to defeat the Dark Elves. But even so, many Dark Elves still escaped, and it is still unknown where they are hiding. Maybe there were strong Midgards involved in that battle back then. But he couldn't figure it out. Ragnarok was just a legend. Why did his father make preparations so many years in advance? You think Ragnarok is fake, don't you? Seeing Thor's thoughts, Dongshan asked directly. That's right. Thor nods, non-committal. Dongshan showed a look that really was the case, shook his head and laughed and said, so that's why you were exiled. Hearing this, Thor was dumbfounded. How did this topic come back? Aren't we talking about Ragnarok? What does my exile have to do with it? Phil Coulson and others also felt baffled. What are you two talking about? What Dark Elf, Ragnarok, can you not be a Riddler? Director, Chief, I can't do your task. Phil Coulson at the moment mentality completely collapsed. Nick Fury asked him to make friends with Thor and fight for the right to speak, but the key is that he has no way of doing it. Can't he even understand what they're talking about without reading it? Make bricks without straw. You don't even have the right to interrupt, aren't you embarrassing me, fat tiger? Ding, Phil Coulson's mood value is plus 999. Chapter 43. Not to mention Phil Coulson is full of bitterness. At the moment Thor was shocked and asked directly, "What does this have to do with my being exiled? Just say what you want, can you stop being so heartbroken? Haven't you figured it out yet?" Dongshan spread his hands helplessly and said, "As the God King of Asgard, your father knew how to unite and fight thousands of years ago to deal with Ragnarok that may happen in the future. But you, the heir to the throne, are reckless, impulsive, belligerent, and arrogant." As Dongshan pointed out the shortcomings one by one, Thor's face was extremely ugly. He blushed and wanted to refute but couldn't speak. As Dongshan said, it was because he was too reckless and impulsive that he offended his father. "Your father is a qualified ruler." Dongshan didn't care about Thor's shame and anger, and asked bluntly, "On the contrary, do you think that you are qualified to become the new king of Asgard?" Thor was immediately speechless. Before that he thought he was right, the giants of Jotunheim were the enemies of Asgard. What's wrong with him helping Asgard wipe out the enemy? But it turns out he was wrong. Just as Dongshan said, when Midgard was most in danger, his father did not take advantage of the fire to rule Midgard. A timely gift of charcoal, for Asgard to make too strong level godfather. But his reckless impulse brought war to Asgard. When he was surrounded by the giants of Jotunheim, it was his father who came to his rescue, only to be wounded by the counterattack of the Frost Lord Lauf. Even after this, the giants of Jotunheim may well be looking for revenge on Asgard. And all this is because of his whim. In contrast to the two, how could he claim to inherit the throne? No wonder his father was so angry that he directly sealed his divine power and exiled him to Midgard regardless. This is the punishment he deserves. Ding! Thor's emotional value plus 1333. Ding! Loki's emotional value plus 1111. At the same time, inside the temporary camp, Loki sneaked in here, and was seeing and hearing the conversation between Thor and Toshin in real time through the monitoring around the crater. When he heard Dongshan tell the truth, he sneered and said, "That's right. You're right. Why does that idiot Thor inherit the throne? Only I am qualified." With a sneer, Loki was puzzled. Looking at Dongshan and the others in the picture, he really didn't expect that Midgard would be so hidden. The strength of the organization called ERP is so terrifying. It looks like he needs to get Mjolnir as soon as possible and return to Asgard. Where Mjolnir is? Call. Thor took a deep breath and said dejectedly, "That's right, you are right, I am indeed not qualified, and my father should exile me. Maybe I should just stay in Midgard forever and never go back." The cruel truth made Thor unacceptable. At first he only knew that he had angered his father, but he still felt that the crime was not so serious. But now there is only deep shame and self-blame left in his heart. At the moment he had no thought of returning to Asgard. "No. Thor, that's not it." Just at the moment, a firm female voice suddenly sounded. Everyone immediately looked at Jane Foster in unison. Daisy Louise, who had been watching the show, looked at her girlfriend in a daze, and said, "Jane, what are you talking about? What do you know? I think there's something else hidden about this matter." Facing everyone's eyes, Jane Foster took a deep breath, and then said bluntly, "Although I don't know what happened, I believe that no father will give up his child, and your father, Thor, must be like this. It is an indisputable fact that you were exiled, but your father's starting point." While speaking, Jane Foster paused. Then she said word by word, "Maybe it's just to test you." "What?" Thor exclaimed when he heard that. But then he shook his head and smiled wryly, "My divine power has been sealed, and I can't even protect myself. What kind of test is this?" "No. Miss Foster is right, this is the test." Dongshan took the initiative to take the babble and retorted, "You think you are strong, you ignore the potential threat of the enemy, and you don't care about the consequences to Asgard, so your father sealed your divine power. And Midgard is a world dominated by ordinary people, which is just right for you to hone your mind. When you are an ordinary person, you discover that power is not absolutely invincible, and you understand what kind of ability a new king should possess. Maybe that's when you'll be born again." Having said all that, it's finally time to finish. Dongshan directly told the truth. Because he knew that if he didn't say anything, Phil Coulson would be able to analyze the truth of Thor's exile. At that time, what Thor owes is the favor of Shield. For the task assigned by the boss, he will not allow others to pick the peaches. Trial? Freshman? Is that so? Thor froze in place, muttering softly. At the moment, his mood was ups and downs, and he couldn't calm down for a long time, feeling like he was dreaming. It turned out that he not only misunderstood his father, but also failed to understand its deep meaning. Exile is not a punishment, but a test. So is this the real purpose of his father's exile? Ding, Thor's emotional value plus 2333. Ding, Loki's emotional value plus 3333. Chapter 44. Because of the words of Jane Foster and Dong Shan, Thor has hope again. Loki in the monitoring room is completely broken. Damn! How could this be? Loki's face was extremely ugly, and he growled angrily, "Old man, you are so biased. I thought you were completely disappointed in Thor, but I didn't expect that this is your real purpose." Loki's mentality exploded at this moment. But what followed was anger, and strong envy and hatred. Why does that old guy have such a preference for Thor? Is it because he was adopted? No. I'm the new king. What qualifications does that brat Thor have to compete with me? Don't even think about it. Loki gritted his teeth and let out a low growl, his eyes gleaming with determination. Thor's presence is already a great threat. Once Thor breaks the seal and even gets the support of the ERP organization, his throne will not be secure at all. In this case, there is only one last choice. A choice he was unwilling but had to make. Taking a deep look at the monitoring screen, Loki was silent for a long time, and whispered secretly, "My good brother, I hope you don't force me." At the same time as the voice fell, Loki disappeared. Only the hypnotic ability, the S.H.I.E.L.D agent who was unconscious on the ground, and the monitoring screen of Mjolnir were locked in real time. Meanwhile, Mjolnir is there. Thor looked at Dong Shan for advice. "Mr. Tosuji, if this is really a test, how can I pass it? Is it possible to unlock the seal as long as I pass it?" At this moment Thor seemed very excited, as if he had found hope. He is very desperate to seek a result. But in fact, outsiders are just guessing and inferring the facts, and Thor needs to practice it himself. "I think it should be like this." Dong Shan shrugged, noncommittal, and said, "And no matter what the result is, at least you have no other choice right now, don't you?" Thor was dumbfounded when he heard that. "I let you say everything, so can I get back my divine power? Could it be that what you said before was all a lie?" Ding, Thor's emotional value plus 1111. Facing Dongshan's frankness, Thor nodded in the end despite his helplessness and said, "You're right, I really have no choice now. Don't be discouraged, just believe in yourself." Dongshan smiled and patted Thor's shoulder. Anyway, it wasn't him who was exiled, it was Thor who should be worried. And isn't that what they want to see? If Thor is not in a hurry, how can they complete the task assigned by the boss? "Thank you." Thor rolled his eyes and didn't bother to pay attention to Dong Shan. He turned to look at Mjolnir on the ground. Gently stroking Mjolnir, he made up his mind that he must find a way to pass the so-called test. As long as he can regain his power, he can return to Asgard. "Mjolnir, wait for me." With a murmur to himself, Thor went straight back to the steel platform. If he stayed here, he was afraid that he would not be able to help crying. Obviously Mjolnir is right in front of his eyes, but he just can't pick it up. What's the difference between seeing a beautiful woman and not being able to hold it hard? Thor. Jane Foster's phoenix eyes were full of worry. This is such a tragic man, people can't help but want to sympathize with him. But Daisy Louise didn't feel anything. Although Thor is very manly, it doesn't fit her aesthetics. She prefers handsome guys like Xi and Nan. Staring at Zenan's side face without blinking, Daisy Louise was wet. "Ahem, let's leave first." Sensing Daisy Louise's gaze, Zenan couldn't stand it. He hurriedly followed Thor and left here. The group of people quickly returned to the room they were in before. "Mr. Dong Shan." "Jane." After each took their seats, Thor still asked a little unwillingly, "If the test is real, how can I pass the test? This question is too difficult, I don't know how to do it." Jane Foster wanted to speak, but finally stopped. She subconsciously looked at Dong Shan. Among the people present, she and Daisy were simply spectators, without any status at all. Even if Thor took the initiative to ask back, it should be Dong Shan who spoke first. "Miss Foster speaks her mind." Seeing Jane Foster's concerns, Dong Shan waved his hands and said, "Everyone wants to help Mr. Thor. If you have any opinions, you can speak up directly." Maybe it will help Mr. Thor. Well, Mr. Tosuji is right. Jane Foster breathed a sigh of relief upon hearing the words, and couldn't help feeling warm in her heart. Dongshan really has no airs at all. Also a member of ERP, Dongshan seemed to be very talkative and did not make people feel pressured at all. In contrast, the other two seemed a lot colder. Especially Bai Miao, who has conflicts with Thor. Although he is a little more handsome, stronger and smarter than Thor, she just can't get any favors. Thor, I thank you. Suppressing the distracting thoughts in her heart, Jane Foster pondered for a while, and said bluntly, actually, I think this test is actually not difficult. How to say? Jane, tell me. Thor asked excitedly. Unexpectedly, Jane Foster was a big move when he opened his mouth, and he was looking forward to it. And Jane Foster went on to say, the so-called test is just to make Thor realize his own problems. Just like Mr. Tosuji said, Thor must at least have the qualifications to inherit the future throne. So if you want to pass the test, you just need to work hard in this area. Chapter 45. Yes, Miss Foster is right. After Jane Foster's voice fell, Dongshan also smiled and said, actually, to be honest, it's very easy to pass the test. This kind of Prince Exile drama is so vulgar that it can't even be sold at the box office of 1 million in Hollywood. PSST. As soon as this remark came out, everyone present couldn't help laughing. Even Phil Coulson is a bit overwhelmed. As Dongshan said, he immediately thought of a dozen similar movies, and the scenes were almost exactly the same. The prince was exiled and went through hardships, and the king returned. Ascend and shout, 100,000 soldiers respond. During the period, they met a folk woman again, and the two supported each other, and finally lived a life of sexual bliss. Oh, great gift shit. This kind of vulgar plot is simply disgusting to watch. Bai Miao even showed a mocking expression. It's sad that Asgard has such a stupid heir. And compared with Thor, the adopted son named Loki is more suitable to inherit the throne. But he was just thinking about it in his heart. With the task assigned by the boss, they must be on Thor's side in the end. After all, only fools can take advantage of it. Seeing everyone's reaction, Thor's head was full of black lines. His face flushed red. It's obviously a very serious matter, and it's related to his fate. Can you guys be more serious? But the point is that he can't say anything to refute at all. Ding, Thor's emotional value plus 2333. Smile, laugh, what's so funny? Seeing that he became a joker, Thor yelled dissatisfiedly, since you all see the problem, why don't you talk about the solution? Otherwise, what's the use of just talking about it? Dissatisfaction is dissatisfaction, he still wants to find a solution. And he was changing the subject. Cough cough. Dongshan coughed lightly, and said solemnly, the method is very simple. Midgard has countless books, movies, and TV shows about power and strategy. I can find at least 1,000 different theories on how to be a good king. So you just need to read more books. As he said that, he shrugged his shoulders and made a calm look. As if it wasn't a problem at all. But when everyone heard what he said, they all nodded in agreement and agreed with this statement very much. Thor. Seeing this situation, Thor was paralyzed. Reading? Isn't this embarrassing him, fat tiger? In Asgard, he hated reading and studying, so he gradually grew into a reckless hero. His younger brother Loki is the exact opposite. From their mother, Loki learned a great deal of magic, witchcraft, and more. Now Dongshan let him read and study, it is more uncomfortable than killing him. Ding, Thor's emotional value plus 1333. Actually, you don't have to read the book. Seeing that Thor was in a hurry, Jane Foster couldn't bear it, and interrupted, in fact, Thor is just used to using force to solve any problem. As long as he can realize this problem and make changes, he may have met the qualifications to pass the test. Saying what she didn't believe, Jane Foster felt a little guilty. Because she still didn't say the second half of the sentence. That is, with Thor's reckless personality, trying to get him to change is probably harder than going to heaven. But Thor doesn't realize this. When Jane Foster said that there is no need to read books, he immediately nodded and said, yes, I think Jane is right. Hehe, as long as you are happy. Dongshan shrugged, non-committal. He glanced at Jane Foster meaningfully, only seeing the other party with a guilty conscience. But soon he withdrew his gaze, chuckled and said, now that you have found a solution, it will depend on Mr. Thor's own efforts. I hope you can get what you want. While talking, Dongshan looked directly at Zinan. And Xian Nan also stood up directly. Everyone. Under everyone's gaze, Xian Nan said calmly, our mission on this trip is over. When Kamartaj and Asgard made a cooperation agreement, we actually very much welcome Mr. Thor's arrival. If necessary, ERP will provide corresponding attention and help. As for Mjolnir. As Xian Nan paused, he looked at Phil Coulson. Phil Coulson was a little nervous and said, Mr. Zinan, don't worry, we are just keeping it for you. Mjolnir naturally belongs to Mr. Thor. Well, I hope so. Zinan was noncommittal and did not believe Phil Coulson's guarantee at all. Or maybe he doesn't believe in S.H.I.E.L.D. With such an artifact like Mjolnir, even if it cannot be taken as its own, I am afraid that there will be a lot of necessary research. But the reason why the artifact is an artifact is because it surpasses the mortal level. It's like a space Rubik's Cube with a space gem hidden inside. If rash research leads to uncontrollable consequences, it will only bring disaster to the Earth. The New York War is the best example. Then we'll leave first. Dongshan, you stay. Xian Nan took Bai Miao away directly. But Dongshan stayed. Since it is necessary to provide help, no one is more suitable than Dongshan. Phil Coulson certainly welcomes this. Compared to Xian Nan and Bai Miao, the talkative Dongshan revealed a lot of information, and he wished Dongshan could stay. A group of people quickly became angry and began to do their own things. Dongshan returned to the lounge arranged by Phil Coulson. In another lounge, Thor is with Jane Foster, chatting about how to become a qualified monarch. In this teacher-student relationship, the two breed an ambiguous atmosphere. But in Phil Coulson's office, the atmosphere was extremely serious. Phil Coulson said in a deep voice, My lord, the above is the information I collected. I think ERP and Shadow Realm are real, and it's not that some people are deliberately plotting evil behind the scenes. Ding, Phil Coulson's mood value is plus 1333. Chapter 46. 46, I don't want you to think, I want me to think. Hearing Phil Coulson's judgment, Nick Fury wanted to refute. But at the moment he was so shocked that he couldn't speak. From Phil Coulson's report, he also learned the contents of Toshin's previous revelations, including the battle between the six-level godfathers. ERP Emperor. Kamartaj Sorcerer Supreme. Mephitos, Lord of Hell. Dark Dimension Dormammu. Lord of the Shadow Realm. This supreme powerhouse gave people a great sense of oppression in the invisible. Just hearing the name Nick Fury makes my heart tremble. When they learned the secrets of the Earth's past, others were dumbfounded, subconsciously wanting to doubt the authenticity of what Dongshan said. This is his instinct as a top agent. But with so many clues in front of him, he couldn't find an entry point even if he wanted to question it. Ding, Nick Fury's mood value plus 2333. I see. After a long silence, Nick Fury said something lightly. He still looked very calm. This immediately made Phil Coulson feel admiration. The director is indeed worthy of being the director, and he will always be the same as before. But far away at S.H.I.E.L.D. headquarters, Nick Fury's face was dark and deep. You're right, Phil Coulson, and you're right to befriend Thor and ERP. Suppressing the shock in his heart, Nick Fury said in a deep voice, Next, I want you to help Thor with all your strength, show the friendship of S.H.I.E.L.D., and at the same time find opportunities to find out more information. I temporarily grant you the same authority as me. Yes, thank you sir, I will definitely complete the task. Phil Coulson was very honored to hear that, and immediately promised repeatedly. After some conversation, the remote communication ended. Phil Coulson is a fart, and began to devote himself to S.H.I.E.L.D. until he died. Nick Fury, on the other hand, had a headache and his face turned black. Picking up the old-fashioned pager by the table, he hesitated to activate it, but finally put it back in place. Not yet. At least not now. Muttering softly, Nick Fury seemed to have made up his mind. Captain Marvel is his last hole card. Although I don't know how strong it is, it must be about the same level as Level Godfather, after all, the master who rubs the stars with his hands. Unless something can't be done, he won't contact the other party easily. But he won't do everything either. Picking up the communicator on the side, Nick Fury dialed a number directly. It reads, Black Widow. After waiting for as long as a minute, the communication was finally connected, and a soft female voice came from the opposite side. Director, what's the matter? I'm already on a mission. Natasha Romanoff, things have changed. Nick Fury didn't beat around the bush, and said in a low voice to himself, the task of contacting Tony Stark is cancelled. The Avengers plan is officially launched, I need you to go to Africa immediately, there is a big guy waiting for you there. Regardless of Natasha Romanoff's opinion, Nick Fury's tone was unmistakable. And what he said made Natasha Romanoff exclaim. Natasha Romanoff asked directly, so anxious? What happened? Did the people in the council agree? Don't worry about it, just do it. Nick Fury said indifferently. Okay. Natasha Romanoff said in a frivolous tone, you are the chief, you have the final say, leave the Hulk to me. The communication will end soon. Nick Fury sat there silently, his eyes shining brightly. Avengers was something he had thought about for a long time. However, due to the obstruction of the council, there has been no way to start it, but at the moment he has ignored these. S.H.I.E.L.D must master a powerful squad in order to face more and more threats. Not even just Shadow World, but ERP and even Asgard. Nick Fury got up and walked to the corner of the room. There is a lot of debris here. But only he knows that these are Howard Stark's relics, but he has never returned these things to their original owners. After all, no one knows what Howard left in it. What if some S.H.I.E.L.D secrets are involved? However, after studying for so long, they didn't find anything abnormal, maybe it should be returned to the original owner. And taking this opportunity, he can also get in touch with Tony Stark himself. Picking up a bird's eye view of Stark Industries, Nick Fury whispered softly, Howard, your son is grown up, and you want him to join the organization you founded, right? Meanwhile, Hammer Industrial Park, New York. At the moment in the Industrial Park laboratory, Obad Stan, who had just been rescued from prison by Dao Long, was doing some experiments in this laboratory with Ivan Vank. Just a day earlier, Obad Stein had reached out to Justin Hammer. This person is the person in power of Hammer Industries today. What's more subtle is that the relationship between Justin Hanmo and Tony Stark is not bad, but when they meet each other, they definitely have to say something weird to each other. Just because Hammer Industries is famous is because of plagiarism history Stark Industries. This also caused Tony Stark to publicly diss Hammer Industries more than once as a beggar picking up garbage. The conflict between the two companies has therefore intensified. It is precisely because of this that when Obad Stein chooses a partner, he thinks of Hammer Industries for the first time. And the result was not what Obad Stein expected. When he proposed cooperation intention and showed the technology in his hands, Justin Hammer directly gave the greatest sincerity. The other party not only agreed to protect them, but even provided them with an exclusive laboratory. After coming here, Obadestan and Ivan Vank began to prepare for the creation of more supernatural beasts. The spider beast was sent out by Obadestan to search for news. He didn't forget the task assigned by Dao Long. And in the lab, with sufficient materials provided by Hammer Industries, after a full day of preparation, it's time to create the supernatural beast. Chapter 47. Ivan, how is your progress? Don't delay my creation of supernatural beasts. Complacent about connecting the magic sealing box to the energy transmission center, Obad Stan asked Ivan Vank not far away. Ivan Vank fiddled with the arc reactor in his hand. Without raising his head, he said calmly, you can rest assured about this. The arc reactor I developed is enough to supply electricity for an entire city, and it is definitely more than enough to make supernatural beasts. As he spoke, he picked up the manufactured arc reactor and put it into the energy core. With the activation of the arc reactor, the entire energy equipment was in operation, emitting bursts of bright white light. The energy converted by the arc reactor is input into the magic sealing box. Immediately, the magic sealing box burst into light, shooting out a virtual projection, on which many golden cards were displayed. That is the magic spar in the magic sealing box. Only the integrate gene is needed to create supernatural beasts out of thin air. If it is a powerful gene, such as the blood of a dinosaur, a mutant creature, or a strong man, the supernatural beasts produced by the integration will also be stronger. It's like the spider beast made by Dao Long using the summoned demon spider. Sang Whip, who turned into a dark killer, is no match for him at all. At the moment Abadstein chose the dinosaur gene collected by Hammer Industries, which was extracted from a frozen mosquito. However, limited by today's technology, Hammer Industries is not sure about cloning dinosaurs. So that drop of blood was stored away. When Abadstein made a request, Justin Hammer didn't have any hesitation, so he was taken out directly. Buzz buzz. Obadestein's eyes were fiery, and he directly selected a card. He directly put the card into the magic sealing box below. With the support of sufficient energy, the magic sealing box operates at full power, directly integrating the dinosaur genes into the magic spar. Accompanied by a surge of electric light, a pitch-black projection quietly appeared. There seemed to be a terrifying monster roaring in it, and the horror and ominous power permeated the air, making Obadestein and Sangbian couldn't help feeling awe-inspiring. But immediately the two were in ecstasy, looking forward to what kind of supernatural beast they would create. Ho 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 ho! Soon the black aura dissipated, revealing the hideous figure within. That is a burly dragon beast. I saw sharp horns on its head, bloody eyes shining like flames, and sharp barbs on all its limbs. And in his hand was holding a pitch-black broad knife. Ding! Yvonne Vank's mood value plus 888. Ding! Obadestein's emotional value plus 888. Hiss! Such a terrifying supernatural beast, I feel like I am no match for it at all. Seeing this supernatural beast, Ivan Vanko suddenly gasped. Originally, he obtained the ability of the Dark Killer. But facing the evil dragon and beast at this moment, he couldn't give birth to the slightest desire to resist, and that terrifying power made people feel terrified. As an ordinary person, Obadestein needless to say. His face turned pale at the moment. But even so, there was a blazing light in his eyes. The birth of the evil dragon beast made him see the hope of Xianqi. Not only to revenge Tony Stark, but also to create an era that belongs to Obadestein, an era that even far surpasses Stark Industry. With the magic sealing box and Yvonne Vank's arc reactor, the future of Stan Industries can be expected. Thinking of this in his heart, Obadestein was so excited that his body trembled. Isn't it what he's after to have a position of power? Before that, he wanted to occupy the magpie's nest and hide from She Stark Industry, but unfortunately he fell short later. But now it is not. After turning to Dao Long, he possesses power far beyond ordinary people's imagination. Even She Stark Industries will be trampled under his feet. Tony Stark, just wait, your dear uncle Obade is back. Obadestein's heart was full of killing intent. But soon he calmed down, and directly turned the evil dragon beast back into a card, and released it directly when needed. After finishing these, he looked at Yvonne Vank and said, Yvonne, are you ready? It's time to surprise the world. I've been waiting for this day for more than 10 years. Yvonne Vanko gritted his teeth. Thinking of the scene where his father died with hatred, endless anger welled up in his heart, making him wish he could kill Tony Stark right away. But in the end he held back because he didn't want Tony Stark to die too easily. He had to torture and humiliate Tony Stark. Including the history Stark Industry created by that B.D. Howard, he also wants to destroy it with his own hands to vent his hatred. Don't worry, we will succeed this time. Abadstein patted Yvonne Vank on the shoulder and walked directly outside the laboratory. At the same time, he said in a cold voice, you have an improved mechanical armor, and I have a monster army formed by supernatural beasts. This time, Tony Stark will definitely die without a place to die. Tread tread. Yvonne Vank didn't speak, and followed Abadstein out of the laboratory. The two quickly found Justin Hanmo to communicate. When he saw the blueprints of the mechanical armor designed by Yvonne Vank, as well as the blueprints of the simulated mechanical beasts, Justin Hammer was beyond excited. With a big wave of his hand, he handed over a production plant to Yvonne Vank. At the same time, the three decided to hold a press conference 3 days later. At that time, Justin Hammer will announce in public that Hammer Industries will hold an industrial expo to show the world an epic-making invention. Even Justin Hammer has thought about it, and must send an invitation letter to Tony Stark at that time. He was looking forward to seeing the other party's impotent and furious look. Mr. Obady, Mr. Yvonne, wish us a happy cooperation. Justin Hanmo held a glass of red wine in his hand, his face full of pride. Abadstein and Yvonne Vank looked at each other. The two showed strange smiles, and directly raised their glasses to Justin Hanmo, and the atmosphere seemed very harmonious. Everyone feels that they have made a profit, but who is the final winner? Ding! Chapter 48. In the reverse world. After 3 hours of training, Lin Fan was drenched in sweat. The ESP training box is not just for nothing. Even on the contrary, if you want to obtain super abilities, you must undergo long-term training. Although these trainings are just some basic physical exercises, the 3-year period is too long. It seems that the ESP training box must be optimized quickly, otherwise the flowers will be gone. Wiping off the sweat with a towel, Lin Fan muttered. 3 years later Thanos called. At that time, let alone teleportation, even if it is the incarnation of Superman, what is the use? He didn't want to bet his life on a 50% chance. So it is imperative to optimize the ESP training box. Soon Lin Fan went to take a shower and came directly to the ERP base, seeing Mijin who was tinkering with the invention machine. Hey Mijin, any progress? Lin Fan greeted with a smile. Boss, you are here. Mijin looked up and saw Lin Fan, and immediately showed a touching smile. But then she said helplessly angrily, the technological content of this thing is too advanced. I don't understand it at all. It might be possible if my brother, the Frankenstein, is still possible. I'm sorry, boss. Speaking of this matter, Mijin seemed very distressed. The invention machine is indeed a black technology. Because Dong Shan had to perform the task that Lin Fan had given before was transferred to her. But after studying for a long time, she didn't have any clue. It's okay, Mijin. Lin Fan smiled and said indifferently, this thing is beyond common sense. If it really doesn't work, then let the invention machine directly create blueprints out of thin air. But it will take too long, at least half a year. Mijin immediately refuted when she heard the words. Although the invention machine can create blueprints out of thin air, it takes a very long time. Unless relevant research information or data can be provided, the time required to create on the original basis is greatly shortened, which is why Mijin tries to understand the invention machine. Haha, Mijin, you are really stubborn and cute. Lin Fan didn't care about being retorted by Mijin, but laughed and joked instead. Mijin, who was originally serious, was taken aback when she heard the words. Immediately, her pretty face suddenly turned red, and she lowered her head and said in a low voice, "Nor. Not at all, I just don't want the boss to be disappointed." As she spoke, Mijin became more and more shy. Is this too ambiguous? Boss, I'll go to work first. Fearing that Lin Fan might misunderstand, Mijin picked up the invention machine and ran back to her room. Lin Fan shook his head helplessly as he looked at the running away posture. Isn't it? Am I that scary? Touching his face, Lin Fan shrugged, thinking it was a woman's weakness. He sat down on the chair in the laboratory by himself. Looking at the computer screen in front of him, it shows the real-time display of the transmission satellite monitoring the whole world. Once an abnormal event occurs around the world, the transmission satellite will give a reminder as soon as possible. Just like the satellites detected Mjolnir and Thor falling from the sky before. This greatly facilitated Lin Fan's actions. Speaking of which, after such a long time, Zinan and the others should come back. Tread. At the moment, there was a sound of footsteps. Xian Nan and Bai Miao walked in. Boss. As soon as they entered the laboratory, the two saw Lin Fan sitting there. They immediately walked towards Lin Fan quickly. Hee, Zinan, Bai Miao. Lin Fan looked at the two with a smile, nodded with satisfaction and said, you have done a good job, but there will be a bigger test in the future, and you must be more careful. Don't worry boss, we will not let you down. When Zinan and Bai Miao heard the words, they immediately reassured in deep voices. They knew what Lin Fan was talking about. Long before setting out to perform the mission, Lin Fan told them about the situation in Asgard, even including the troubles they would encounter next. For example, God King Odin feigned death to escape Thor's test. For example, Loki and Thor, the half-brothers who love each other and kill each other. For example, Loki will wait for an opportunity to eradicate Thor. Facing the legendary Asgard Protoss, even if they are armored warriors, they must be more careful. Hee, I believe you. Lin Fan got up, smiled and patted the shoulders of the two of them. Glancing at the green light ring on Zinan's hand, he directly reminded, when Loki makes a move, there is a high probability that you will not be opponents under normal circumstances, but you have a green light ring, Zinan. If you can use the full power of the green light ring, you may be able to summon the Emperor's armor again. Hiss. What? After hearing this, Zinan and Bai Miao gasped. The two couldn't believe what they heard. You must know that the Emperor's armor represents the way of heaven, and only the one with the 5 elements can be summoned. At the beginning, they just happened to meet. But then they could no longer summon the Emperor's armor. And now there are only 3 of them, and they can't make up the 5 elements to one. I didn't lie to you. Facing the suspicious eyes of the two, Lin Fan said meaningfully, as big as your heart is, as big as your world is. The power of the green light ring depends on the willpower of the holder. Even if it's just you, it's possible to summon the Emperor's armor with the help of the green light ring. Zinan, you have to have confidence in yourself. After saying that, Lin Fan patted Xian on the shoulder again. Then he left the laboratory directly. After accumulating tens of thousands of points, it's time to make an appointment to draw cards. What kind of reward will this time be? Inside the laboratory, Xian froze there, recalling Lin Fan's words in his mind. He was thinking about how to summon the Emperor's armor. Bei Miao, who was on the side, was shocked, looked at Xian with envy, and vowed to work harder. One day in the future, he will make the boss look at him high. He wants to become the boss's most valued subordinate. None of them. Chapter 49. In the villa, Lin Fan sat cross-legged on the bed. His mind sank into the system. During the period of participating in Thor's plot, he once again accumulated nearly 40,000 points, and finally he was able to happily draw the lottery again. According to the system settings, ordinary card draws only need 100 emotional points. 100 emotion points in the silver lottery draw. Gold level lucky draw 1000 emotion points. 10,000 emotion points in diamond level lottery. Before that, Lin Fan had only smoked diamond level once, and finally got the green light ring, which is definitely worth the money. Holding nearly 40,000 emotional points, Lin Fan hesitated how to use them. Now he has developed a basic team. The villain has Dao Long, which is enough for appearance at present, but it lacks absolute top combat power. On the decent side, 3 armored warriors have assembled. Xian still has the green light ring bestowed by him in his hand. As long as Zinan makes good use of the green light ring, not to mention comparable to Thanos and Odin, but at least equal to Thor. If you can summon the Emperor's armor, you can definitely win 50/50ths with Thanos. Definitely refers to Thanos in normal state. Thanos, who has infinite gems, has surpassed the regular level Godfather, and only magic can defeat magic. Since there is no urgent need, let's take a gamble. After pondering for a while, Lin Fan made a decision in his heart. Give it a go, turn your bike into a motorcycle. Judging from the current situation, Zinan and others are strong enough, at least for a short period of time. And Dao Long took in 2 younger brothers, so he didn't have to do anything anymore. So he doesn't have a very urgent need right now. That is to say, even if all the emotional points are wasted, he still has a chance to save them back. System. Having made up his mind, Lin Fan immediately ordered the system, directly conduct 3 diamond level lottery draws. This is a big gamble. 3 consecutive diamond level lottery draws, if you don't succeed, you will win. Although he said he didn't care. But if he really draws a pile of garbage and loses 30,000 emotional points, Lin Fan will also feel heartache. Ding, the host consumes 30,000 emotional points, the lottery is in. A cold system prompt sounded quietly. And almost at the same time, in front of Lin Fan, the gorgeous lottery page turned. Pictures of countless heavens and worlds flashed in front of Lin Fan non-stop. The animation special effects of the diamond level lottery draw are even more gorgeous. Looking at the pictures from the heavens and the world, Lin Fan couldn't help but look forward to it, wondering what reward he could get this time. A total of 30,000 emotional points, you don't know how to flatter the system. In a short while, the card draw is over. The lottery page stopped turning, and there were only 3 cards that shone with golden light, showing their extraordinariness. True or fake? Golden legend? 3 directly. Seeing Lin Fan for the first time, he immediately felt incredible. Isn't this surprise too sudden? Although the diamond level can indeed produce good things, the lottery is a matter of probability, and no one can guarantee that it will be a hit every time. But at the moment 3 golden cards, proving that his lottery draw is worth the money. A golden card, no matter how bad it is, it won't be garbage, right? Check rewards. With the thought in Lin Fan's mind, the reward information emerged in his mind. Props, Fire Source Effect, Transforming Silicon-Based Life Introduction, from the world of shape-shifting King Kong, it can give the soul of mechanical creatures and transform them into silicon-based creatures. Props, Ashura Summoner Effect, Summon Shura Armor Introduction, from the world of Armor Warriors, use this summoner to summon Shura's armor to complete the fit and become Shura. After the system transformation, there is no requirement for the use of this summoner. Name, Magneto Ability, Magnetic Control Introduction, from the X-Men world, Omega Level Mutant, masters powerful magnetism, can control all metal substances in the world. After reading the information about the 3 rewards, Lin Fan was stunned. This wave of lottery is too much value for money, right? Originally, he was thinking that if he fails, he will be benevolent, or start all over again, but he didn't expect the system to be so powerful. Needless to say, the tinder comes from. It can endow mechanical creatures with souls and transform them into silicon-based organisms, that is, shape-shifting diamonds. As long as the energy is not exhausted, Lin Fan can form a mechanical army. The combat power of shape-shifting King Kong is very fierce. Especially in the Marvel world, there are all kinds of magical metals, and the shape-shifting King Kong that comes out is unimaginable. For example, mechanical creations made of vibranium can ignore physical damage. Or the destroyer of Asgard. It is made of URU metal, which is almost indestructible and claims to be indestructible. If it is transformed into a shape-shifting King Kong, the combat power will be overwhelming. ERP Shape-Shifting King Kong branch, hereby established. Lin Fan chuckled secretly, already thinking of how to use the fire source. This thing will definitely catch everyone's attention. Even if planned properly, the appearance of shape-shifting King Kong will harvest a lot of emotional value for him. Concentrating on himself, Lin Fan turned to look at the other 2 rewards. Shura Summoner can summon Shura Armor. Maybe not as good as the Emperor's armor, but the Shura armor fits together, and the combat power is definitely very powerful. Definitely the strength of the armor depends on the strength of the summoner. With Lin Fan's current mortal body, even if he summons the Shura armor, he can at most display Thor's level of strength. But for now, there are no supermodels on Earth. Shura armor is enough to crush all villains. But my own strength also needs to be improved as soon as possible. With a whisper, Lin Fan ordered to the system, put Magneto next to Day Long. From now on, Magneto will be the number 2 figure in Shadow World. Chapter 50. At nightfall, a black shadow walked through the base. The person soon came to where Mjolnir was. Climbing over the steel platform, the shadow jumped into the crater and walked quickly to the side of Mjolnir. Under the illumination of the projection lamp, the black shadow reveals its true face. This man is none other than Thor. Mjolnir, Dad is here to see you. Thor looked at Mjolnir excitedly, reached out and stroked gently. He couldn't sleep tonight. The experience during the day made his heart flutter, and every time he thought of these things, he wished he could get what he wanted right away. Pass the test, recover your powers, and return to Asgard. It's a pity that these are all his fantasies. Even with Dongshan's warning and Jane Foster's help, his eyes are still darkened. Wanting to learn how to become a qualified king, this question is too difficult for him. But fortunately, he has now found a way to solve the problem. With longing for the future, Thor leans directly beside Mjolnir, who will sleep with his dearest Mjolnir tonight. Father, I will definitely pass your test and will not let you down. Thor closed his eyes, thinking about it. Buzz buzz. Just as Thor closed his eyes and was about to sleep, a figure quietly appeared out of thin air. Loki stood silently on the steel platform, clad in rich clothes. Looking at the good brother below, his eyes flickered with a cold look, just because he had heard Thor's ravings just now. Want to go back to Asgard? My good brother, you asked for it. Angry in his heart, Loki said directly in a deep voice, stop dreaming, Thor, you can't go back. Who? Thor jerked up, his eyes piercing. Although he has lost his divine power, he is still that Thor, and the power of the strong will not disappear. But when he saw the owner of the voice, he suddenly showed a stunned expression and said, Loki. How is it you? Thor never expected it to be Loki anyway. But then he said with a look of ecstasy, hey, Loki, are you here to pick me up? My good brother. No. Thor, you can't go back. Facing Thor's expectation, Loki shook his head directly. He flashed into the crater. After experiencing the change in Jotunheim, the two brothers reunited on Earth again, but huge amounts of turning points happened to both of them. What? Why? Did something happen? Hearing what Loki said, Thor immediately asked anxiously, if it's about Jotunheim, I can explain it, as long as you take me to see my father, I really know I'm wrong. When talking about this, Thor looked very serious. Because he is indeed aware of the problem. With the help of Jane Foster, he learned about many cases of being a monarch, and he also understood how much trouble he had caused. If possible, he would like to apologize to his father in person. Go back. Facing Thor's gaze, Loki's eyes flickered coldly. But on the surface, he had a dead fish face, and said in a deep voice, "Father is dead. How is it possible? God King Odin is dead." In the monitoring room, Phil Coulson exclaimed. Just now he received a report that someone ran to the crater where Mjolnir was, and that person was Thor. Originally, he wasn't going to stop it, and even asked everyone not to bother. But then he received the message again, strangers appear out of nowhere, approach Thor, and talk about Asgard. Hearing the news, Phil Coulson rushed to the monitoring room immediately. Then he heard the conversation between the brothers Thor and Loki. You must know that this is Odin, the king of gods. He conquered the 9 realms in the mouth of Thor, and faced Mephitos, the lord of hell, in the mouth of Dongshan. How could he die suddenly? Phil Coulson wondered, feeling like he was dreaming. How did the great existence of the level god father fall? Could it be that everything Thor and Dongshan said before was actually lying to him? The so-called level god father is nothing more than that? No. He's not dead. Just at the moment, an indifferent voice sounded. Immediately after, Dongshan walked into the monitoring room. Sure enough, as the boss expected, Loki has come to Earth. Looking at the two brothers Thor and Loki in the picture, Dongshan's eyes flickered strangely. But on the surface he said calmly, the great existence of the level god father, even if he is old, is by no means so easy to fall. Unless he chooses to take the initiative to end his life. Phil Coulson was silent when he heard the words, non-committal. Without understanding, there is no right to speak. Facing Dongshan's statement, he didn't know whether to believe or doubt it, but just looked at the surveillance screen silently. Perhaps more information can be obtained from this person who suddenly appeared. That's why he came to the monitoring room for the first time. He even issued a special order to keep everyone away from the crater, in order to provide Thor and Loki with full freedom. Including Dongshan, who was also invited by him. And all this is for information. Ding, Phil Coulson's mood value is plus 888. Under the watchful eyes of the two, Thor in the monitoring screen directly collapsed. How could the father die? If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel so you're notified of future uploads. You can find the next parts in the playlist visible on the screen or on my channel. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.